A happy couple moving in together. A secret life of infidelity and drugs.
When I told her to get out of my house, I don't know where she went and stayed that night.
A joint bank account missing $100,000. A gun that's missing one bullet.
There was multiple firearms there, from handguns to rifles to shotguns.
Police don't know whether they're dealing with a desperate woman on the run.
And being a private investigator, people thought maybe she'd be able to disappear.
Or a very clever murder.
She pretty much vanished, just out of thin air.
The northwestern part of Florida, also known as the Florida Panhandle, is sometimes referred to as Florida's Emerald Coast because of the beautiful, clear green water. Its westernmost city, Pensacola, has a population of just over 50,000 people.
Pensacola is a vibrant city, home of the world-famous Blue Angels, world's widest beaches, downtown's picking up. It's real vibrant on the weekends. It's a great place to be.
Pensacola is a small, big town. The population's growing. We're growing up. We have a minor league baseball team, a minor league hockey team. College now has a football team that's won back-to-back college championships for their division. Yet, Pensacola is still that town where people open the door for you. And, you're 7 people away from knowing everybody in the town.
On September 14th, 2017, Cassandra Waller contacts the Pensacola Police Department and files a missing persons report on her girlfriend, Taylor Wright.
Cassandra called the police department. Hey, I haven't heard from Taylor in a long time. It's kind of weird.
So Cassandra Waller was Taylor Wright's girlfriend at the time.
They recently moved in together. They kind of took that next step, that next evolution that couples do of moving in together. So everything was moving forward. There were no issues at all. So for her to kind of up and vanish one day was weird.
Investigators try to learn everything they can about Taylor Wright.
We want to know the person that's missing. We want to know their background, any issues, their traits, because it might help us find them.
33-year-old Taylor Wright is a recently divorced mother.
Taylor was a private investigator at the time of her disappearance. She was currently going through the hiring process to be a police officer here at the Pensacola Police Department. And she had been a sworn law enforcement officer up in Jacksonville, North Carolina. From what we could gather, talking to friends and family, Taylor's son was the center of her life. She was a loving mother, a great friend, loved to be in the outdoors, just all around good person.
So Taylor, she was small, but she was mighty. When I spoke with her she said she had a zest for life. She was a force to be reckoned with, and someone who was very energetic and just happy to be around people. She would make friends with just about anyone she met.
Taylor is last seen wearing black sunglasses and a necklace with a bullet as a pendant.
The initial detective just started kind of working the case, but he always had this inclination something wasn't right. She pretty much vanished, just out of thin air.
Investigators bring Cassandra in for further questioning.
She may be the reporting person on a missing person case, but learning that they were involved in an intimate relationship, they were moving in together, we need to get a interview of her where we're in control, like we are here at the police department, not at her house. So she voluntarily came to the police department and provided us with this interview. She was nervous. At one point, she began to cry during the interview, but appeared that she wanted us to find Taylor and make sure that she wasn't harmed.
The story of Taylor and Cassandra's relationship is slowly revealed. Cassandra meets Taylor through an online dating app in April of 2017.
It was a little bit of a rocky relationship. They had been dating for quite a few months. While that was happening, she did find out that there was some alleged drug use as well as another relationship continuing on, some infidelity still happening. with, I believe it was a woman in Mississippi.
Whenever I found out about Taylor, like, kind of having this relationship that she didn't end with this other girl, and I told Taylor to get on my life and everything, and she kept begging to text me, please, just, like, hear me out.
Taylor did have an affair with another female, and that was a concern to us, right? That would potentially give Cassandra a motive.
Taylor asks Cassandra to meet her at the home of her friends Ashley and Zach. Like Taylor, Zach is a former police officer who now works as a private investigator. Cassandra goes to Zach and Ashley's house to meet Taylor.
So I was like, so Taylor, what about the cocaine? And Taylor said, she paused, and she was like, yeah, I've done it 3 times though. That's it. She goes, I swear you can test me whatever you want. It's not an addiction. She goes, I was going through a lot, and I was fighting depression, and I needed to just be up. She goes, I swear to God, like, any day you want. She goes, I'll buy the drug test. You can test me. Prior to, like, that honesty night, I like how you call it that, there was a couple times when she wouldn't go to sleep. She'd, like, stay up all night. And the first time we were in New Orleans, she had nosebleeds that night. But, like, after honesty night, she was sleeping through the night. She was consistent. She was organized. She was focused. And that's why I decided to let her move into my house.
Taylor starts to move into Cassandra's house the weekend before she goes missing. On the morning of Friday, September 8th, 2017, Cassandra and Taylor are both preparing to leave the house.
She made me breakfast. She made me, like, eggs and bacon and stuff. And she was in no hurry for anything. You know, just like a normal morning. She made me coffee.
Cassandra's off work until Tuesday, so she and Taylor are looking forward to spending some quality time together over the next 4 days. But Cassandra gets a text and agrees to go help with something for a couple of hours, which works out well because Taylor also has a morning plan.
On the morning of the 8th, her and Ashley were going to be going to a bank here in Pensacola to try to get some money that Taylor asked Ashley to hold on to.
It was a cashier's check in a safety deposit box.
Taylor and I, we were literally walking out to my car. Ashley pulled up, and I was like, hey, Ash. She goes, hey, Cass. And I was like, oh, have a good one. Like, see you later. And she goes, all right. Literally got my car and I left. So I left the house before they did.
Prior to about 11:30, 12 o'clock-ish, Taylor would respond to Cassandra's text messages. Then they kind of stopped. Cassandra was trying to get a hold of Taylor via text message and asking her, you know, hey, where you at? What's going on? So Cassandra then began texting Ashley, trying to obtain, you know, what's going on? Is everything okay?
She was like, you know, Taylor's broke down and cried twice today. I'm like, what is going on? She won't reply back to me. That's not like Taylor.
So Ashley said that she picked Taylor up that morning. They drove around. They did some errands. Taylor seemed a little bit upset. So they went to a family farm up in Milton, Florida. Let Taylor ride the horses, just kind of, you know, relax, decompress.
She was like, she's out riding the horse right now. We'll be home in a little bit. So that was about, I think it was like 3:30 or so.
Around 7 p.m., Cassandra texts Ashley again.
And Ashley was like, Cass, she left my house like around 5:15-ish. She said that she was going to take an Uber, go get a drink. She needed to think about things. A little bit after that, like 7:58, Taylor sent me that text. And I'm mad at you. I should have called. I just need some time to think. I'm trying to get my life organized and back on track.
Cassandra sends a series of angry texts to Taylor, but gets no reply.
She was very emotional, very upset. She was very confused about the last text she had received, and then the radio silence she got from Taylor.
At like 11:54, 11:55, Ash texts me a screenshot of what Taylor just sent her. She's okay, I'm not doing anything bad. I'm just stressed out with the move in court, and I need a few days to myself.
She said it was just weird, but she respected her privacy, gave it a couple days, and when she hadn't heard anything and found out that Taylor hadn't contacted her son, that's where she got concerned, and that's where law enforcement came in.
As an ex-cop and a private investigator, Taylor has some skills that could help her if she wants to vanish. But why would she do that?
It's hard for someone to vanish. She had money in her bank account. When we went to Cassandra and Taylor's house and we looked through their bedroom, we found a check for thousands of dollars made out to Taylor's name. If I'm going to vanish, I'm going to take as much cash as I can. Why would I leave that? All of her personal hygiene items were there. Everything was there, showing that she was going to come back to that house, not just vanish like she did.
Investigators find several things that raise questions, including Taylor's passport and a gun.
The firearm that I located was in a entertainment stand in Cassandra Waller's bedroom. The firearm was a 6-shot revolver, and when we opened up the cylinder, it only had 5 bullets in it.
What happened to the other bullet? Tourists flock to Pensacola, Florida, to enjoy white sand beaches that are ranked among the very best in the country. It hardly seems like the kind of place where a person could disappear. But on September 8th, 2017, Taylor Wright waves goodbye to her girlfriend, Cassandra Waller, and is never seen again. Police find a gun missing 1 bullet in Cassandra Waller's bedroom. But Cassandra has an explanation.
She had recently got the firearm because Ashley had told her that Taylor was going to be upset that she had gotten the police involved in her missing person case.
She let me borrow a revolver. Well, because I was afraid at first.
What revolver did she let you borrow?
It was a long one. It looked like a really old one. It was in a thick leather thing, but it said something on it. Like if I saw it again, I could tell you what it was. But she let me borrow that until I got my own gun.
Cassandra becomes emotional when detectives ask her some difficult questions.
Do you know who harmed Taylor?
No.
If you knew who harmed her, would you tell us?
Absolutely.
If she was dead right now and you knew, would you tell us?
I don't know. She left.
Did you harm her?
I don't know.
After hours of interrogation, her story remains the same, and investigators sent her home.
After talking to Cassandra, the next person we went and talked to was Ashley. She was the last person that Cassandra said was with Taylor. So, of course, we want to know what Ashley's interaction with Taylor was, being that last person. And did Taylor say something? Was she upset? Something along that line.
We went over to Ashley MacArthur's residence and basically interviewed her at her residence for a while. And Ashley allowed us to search her residence. The only thing we found there was a bunch of firearms. With her being in prior law enforcement, her husband being in prior law enforcement, being a private investigator, they're both avid hunters. There was multiple firearms there, from handguns to rifles to shotguns.
Ashley and her husband Zach tell investigators that Taylor is a heavy drug user and a liar.
We became friends because of me. We were both private investigators, and I just figured, from being a cop for so long, I knew something was up with her. She just seems like a bad manipulator, and she bothers me. I think she's a dangerous person.
Ashley confirms Cassandra's version of events on Friday, September 8th. She picks up Taylor just before 10 a.m., and they spend the day together. The last time Ashley sees her is around 5:15 p.m., when Taylor leaves to get an Uber and go somewhere for a drink.
I think she's probably just off acting like a nut. I mean, at first I was really worried about her, and I got really mad at her about it, but I think she's probably just playing people, because that's after hearing all this, all this is a game to her.
Did she seem like she was acting any different than normal?
Not really. She was upset about this court case that she had going on, and really thought that her ex-husband was going to try to put her back in jail. He thought he was trying to ruin her career, put her back in jail, because she blames him for her not being a cop anymore.
Taylor and her ex-husband Jeff Wright have a history of trouble.
There was one incident where Taylor was over at Jeff's house, and this was in the midst of their very contentious divorce battle.
Taylor's ex-husband was telling Cass to immediately change her locks, to put bells or something on her windows, because I think he and Taylor had had physical altercations.
Aside from the divorce and child custody battle, investigators learned that Taylor and her ex-husband have another reason to be at odds.
Taylor Wright had managed to take $100,000 out of a shared account despite a judge putting a freeze so that neither the ex-husband nor Taylor Wright could access it. However, Taylor found a way, accessed that money, took it from that joint account, and then hid it from him.
Taylor asks Ashley to keep some of it in her safety deposit box and then picks it up on the day she goes missing. Investigators wonder if Taylor's gone into hiding to avoid Jeff, or if he could be responsible for her disappearance.
The motive for Jeff obviously would be there. There's $100,000 missing. There's an ongoing court case concerning that money that's missing. They've got this child they have joint custody of.
Investigators dig deeper into Jeffrey Wright and his relationship with Taylor. Taylor and Jeffrey Wright meet in 2003 while she's pursuing a degree in criminal justice. Jeffrey works for the Department of Defense. They get married and move to Jacksonville, North Carolina, where Taylor enters the police academy and is sworn in as an officer in 2008. They remain married for about 10 years and have one child together, but end up getting divorced in 2016. Following up on Ashley's statement, investigators ask Jeff Wright if Taylor is an addict.
In 2012, she was fired from a pain clinic, not working there, but as a patient, for irregularities pertaining to Percocet and stuff like that.
Jeff also says that Taylor has a lot of guns.
She was part of the I'm a big badass because I've got a 45 crowd. We talked her out of that eventually, and she started carrying 380.
He claims that Taylor is very concerned about money.
So we had a combined investment account that during the course of the marriage went from 300 down to 100. So when she sees that she's in danger of losing all this, on February 22nd of this year, she withdrew $100,000, put it in her own account.
So the judge had ordered her not to take that money out, and she was basically in trouble for doing so.
Taylor was getting all these court summons saying that she had to return this money to the courts so they could determine what percentage would be divided up amongst Jeff and Taylor.
Because of her failure to comply with the court order, Taylor is scheduled to appear at a contempt of court hearing on September 22nd. Taylor begs Jeff to call it off and let her keep the money. He refuses.
Taylor had been stressing out over the last several days because she had this upcoming court date where she had to present this money that was taken from her and Jeff Wright's account to the judge on that day, and there would be some kind of consequences.
Jeff is cleared of any suspicions when it's confirmed he is on a military base out of town at the time Taylor goes missing.
Some people thought because of what she was going through with her ex-husband, the custody battle, the money trouble, that maybe she had just gotten up, left, taken that money to start anew. And being a private investigator, people thought maybe she'd be able to disappear.
And her ex is convinced that the most likely person to help Taylor is also the last one to have seen her, Ashley MacArthur. On September 8th, 2017, Taylor Wright disappears without a trace. Taylor is facing contempt of court charges and has been ordered to return some money that she has taken from her ex-husband. Money she asked her friend Ashley MacArthur to hide. Ashley is an ex-CSI and runs her family's business, Pensacola Automatic Amusement. which supplies pool tables and pinball machines to bars and businesses. She is the last person known to have seen Taylor before she vanished. Investigators bring Ashley into the station to get a more detailed account of their final day together.
Ashley MacArthur said that she picked Taylor right up and they were going to run an errand. From there, she said that they were going to go to her family's farm in Milton and ride some horses because Taylor had had a rough day and she wanted some time to think and be alone and be with the animals. She wanted some time of peace. So that's what she told police, that she and Taylor went to her farm in Milton.
Y'all were out there for how long?
Probably maybe an hour.
Maybe an hour?
Yeah.
And then from there you went
Back to my house.
back to your place.
From there, she told them that Taylor wanted to go to a bar and have a drink and go out and just clear her mind. Now, Ashley said she would drive Taylor to the bar or downtown, wherever she wanted to go, but she says that Taylor insisted on getting an Uber. And that's the last time she says she saw her, is when she walked out to get that Uber.
So we contacted the various rideshare companies here, and none of them had any kind of information that they picked up from Ashley MacArthur's address or Taylor or anybody in the neighborhood. We also reached out to the various cab companies here in Pensacola, and we couldn't find anything to support that they had picked up from Ashley's residence or a Taylor ride as well.
Investigators subpoena cell phone companies to get the records and track the movements of both Taylor and Ashley's cell phones. They determine that Ashley does not go to Milton as she claims on September 8th. She goes to Cantonment, which is 35 miles to the west.
Once we started getting all the data in that we subpoenaed, we began to track Ashley's movements with the cell tower pings that were provided from her cell company. And we determined that Ashley was not 100% honest with us on her whereabouts on the 8th.
Taylor's cell phone is with Ashley in Cantonment, then later back at Ashley's house. Stranger than that, both phones ping in Robertsdale, Alabama on the evening of September 9th. A full day after Taylor's disappearance.
What we discovered was Ashley was attending a wedding out in Robertsdale for some of her friends who were deputies here in Escambia County. And Ashley and her husband are seen at the wedding, but no one actually recalls seeing Taylor at this wedding.
Ashley's phone also pings in the Cantonment area again on Saturday.
We need to figure out what she's doing up here and why she's spending all these hours up here that she never told us about. And we didn't want to call her at that time to alert her that, hey, there's an issue in your statement. So one of the other detectives said, why don't we try the property appraiser website? Okay, let's try that. So we had several different last names that Ashley had used, whether it be Ashley MacArthur, Ashley Britt. The first name we put into the property appraiser website was the last name Britt. And that search revealed that property on Britt Road. We put a pin drop on a map and then started inputting the data from the cell tower hits. And what we discovered was that property on Britt Road would have been encompassed in all the cell tower hit data that we had. So we thought we were definitely on the right track at this point.
On the day she disappears, Taylor tells Cassandra that she's on her way to Ashley's bank to get a $34,000 cashier's check out of her safety deposit box. Investigators contact the bank and find out that Ashley has no box there. They subpoena Ashley's bank records.
I could see on a day previous to Taylor's disappearance that a check for $34,000 had been deposited into one of Ashley's accounts. And then the following day, that money was dispersed amongst multiple accounts within the bank. She had a line of credit, a credit card, a personal bank account. We knew that close to the day that Taylor disappeared, that money was due. We learned that from Cassandra, and then eventually when we got the cell phone records back where she was talking to Ashley and asking for this money, and we could see communication going back and forth where Ashley was just basically saying, hey, I'm busy, I'm sorry, I'm stuck, I'll get with you tomorrow. Seeing those communications, plus knowing that the court was saying that this money was due, how important this money was to Taylor, and that Ashley no longer had that money, really concerned us at that point. That's when the investigation completely shifted from a missing person to a homicide investigation. We felt at that point that we were investigating a homicide.
It becomes clear that Ashley MacArthur is lying to investigators when they subpoena cell phone records showing Ashley and Taylor's phones are not at a farm in Milton on September 8th, but rather a farm in Cantonment, owned by Ashley's cousin, Kyle Britt. It's also clear from bank records that Ashley deposits Taylor's money into her own accounts. Upon examining the facts of the case, a judge grants search warrants for Ashley's residence, her business, and the farm up on Britt Road. But before they do anything, police must make sure to get Ashley and Zach out of their house.
The main reason we wanted to get them out of their residence was all the firearms they had. We did not want an armed confrontation when we go to execute the search warrant at their house. With the limited training she had as a crime scene tech, and with Zach being an ex-law enforcement officer, we just did not want any kind of confrontation where Ashley or Zach get hurt, one of us get hurt, or even an innocent bystander in the neighborhood get hurt. Detective Gigliotti and I reached out to Ashley and explained to her, hey, Ashley, we're done with your phone. Can you meet us here at the Pensacola Police Department tomorrow morning? And once we got her here at the police department and got her situated in one of the interview rooms, we let everybody know, hey, good to go, execute the search warrants.
While the search warrants are being executed, Ashley is interrogated.
Ashley's demeanor changed a lot from the first interview into this interview. She appeared to be not as confident in her answers when we are confronting her with, I guess, what we would consider the hard facts. She would answer softly.
What were y'all doing out there at this farm? We know y'all were there.
We picked up some stuff that Taylor had there that,
What was
that
that?
she had stored. Some kind of lockbox that she had.
Why would you not tell us that originally?
Because she asked me not to tell anyone.
You could see where she was trying to think about her answer, and knowing that we were probably going to counter her with what she's saying, another answer she was going to try to come up with after that answer.
Do you go back out to this farm after y'all leave?
To put her box up?
I'm asking you, do you go back out to the farm after y'all leave?
I don't think so.
She just appeared to be, again, a lot more nervous, not as confident in her answers, slow to answer the questions. In my opinion, tall tale signs of, I got to come up with another lie to cover a lie.
Ask this. Why did you go back out to that farm on Brent Road the next morning?
Maybe to feed horses? I don't know.
During the interview, we were able to get her to confirm, yes, she was out of that farm on Brent Road with Taylor on the day of her disappearance, which was huge because she was able to place her and Taylor at the scene of the crime during the time frame that we have her out there via her cell phone pings.
Meanwhile, the search teams are still looking for any evidence of what happened to Taylor.
Detective Jeff Brown was the lead investigator out there at the scene of the Brent Road search warrant.
So looking at the farmhouse, if you were standing in front of it, you would see a small house that was on the property. Then they had a large horse barn area. There was a lake on this property, and the property stretched for a considerable amount of acres. Kind of on the perimeter of both sides of the property was a thick wooded line that was used for power poles and power companies. So, and it was in the middle of nowhere. There were, not a lot of houses around it, and it was far enough back that if you wanted to do something, no one would probably pay attention in that area. So prior to doing the search warrant, because of the size of the property, I knew I would need multiple investigators, multiple people to help search. I had also contacted Search and Rescue to get as many of their canines out as we could. So we had about 10 to 15 Search and Rescue canines and their handlers out there. I got officers from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission to help, the Escambia County Sheriff's Department, of course our agency. We had an ATV out there to kind of get around on the property. Because of the lake, I was concerned about that, so we actually had the Florida Fish and Wildlife bring a small boat that we could put out on the lake in case she was submerged. So it was a very large-scale search warrant. It was the largest one that I've ever done with multiple moving parts.
They located Kyle Britt inside the residence. They interviewed Kyle Britt, and then everybody began searching the property.
Again, our ultimate plan was hopefully we find Taylor somewhere on this property while Ashley's at the police department so they could arrest her there.
So you're the only one that was with her on this day at this farm that you did not disclose to us?
I didn't do anything to her.
Because she's at that farm, we're going to find her because we're executing a search warrant out there right now.
Fine, but she's not going to be there.
Then where's she at?
That's what she told police. She said, you're not going to find her out there.
So I would be texting the detectives that were interviewing Ashley. Hey, we haven't found anything yet. They would be, have any updates, and kind of the same. Has she confessed? Has she talked about where Taylor is? To kind of help us out because, again, it was a large parcel of land. And eventually they texted and said, she's decided to leave. She's gone.
When being pressed, Ashley ultimately ends the interview by requesting an attorney.
I think at this point I need an attorney because it seems to be that y'all think that I did something to her.
It seems like only seconds after Ashley leaves the police station that Sergeant Brown gets a call from some officers searching a wooded area near the horse barn.
They noticed what they thought was a human skull in a shallow grave.
A judge grants search warrants for Ashley MacArthur's residence, her business, and her cousin's farm on Britt Road. At the same time, they bring her in for questioning under the guise of returning her cell phone. She admits to being at the Britt Road farm with Taylor on the day she disappears. But when Ashley clams up and requests a lawyer, investigators have to let her go. Moments later, the search team on Britt Road make a shocking discovery: a human skull in a shallow grave.
I kind of moved some more of the brush aside, and I could clearly see, just from training experience and working multiple homicides and deaths, that it was a human skull. I called Detective Wilhite on the radio and just said, you got to call me. And he never answered. So I picked up my cell phone and I texted him, call me right now, ASAP. And within seconds, he called me back and it was, hey, I'm pretty sure we got her. At that point, we called out the medical examiner. So they came out and it was a slow process where they broke apart the concrete and the potting soil. It didn't cure correctly, so it wasn't as hard to get apart. They were able to break that apart. We did notice on the human skull and the back of the skull that there was a bullet hole. And then we also found a necklace that we knew Taylor had worn. It was a bullet necklace, so that's how we were able to positively confirm that was Taylor. From looking at everything and how that was the only sign of trauma that we could see, what we believed was Taylor was walking in front, Ashley walked behind her and shot her in the back of the head.
After speaking with the state attorney's office, we went ahead and took Ashley into custody for the murder of Taylor Wright.
On February 2nd, 2018, a judge grants a motion for pretrial release, and Ashley is released on a $400,000 bond.
That's like watching a killer just walk out.
Investigators dig deeper and discover that Ashley's business is under investigation for fraud, racketeering, and arson.
Her company supplied video games, dartboards, games like that to, either bars or restaurants kind of in town that you can play. And there was some allegations of fraud that she was not paying those businesses the percentage that they were due for having those equipment in their establishment.
At some point, the building caught on fire, and that was police's thought that maybe she was trying to hide the evidence and get rid of any records.
I know from looking at the bank records that her business was not doing as good as she kind of portrayed it to be. A lot of times there were negative balances in the accounts that I could see from, previous months. Power bills, things like that were past due. Again, once that $34,000 was deposited, a lot of those negative balances were turned positive.
Ashley MacArthur was charged with fraud, racketeering, and arson.
She was taken into custody at that time, and her bond for the homicide charge was revoked at that time as well.
She went to trial and was found guilty of the fraud and racketeering, but was not found guilty of the arson. But it did keep her in jail.
Aside from balancing her company's books with Taylor's $34,000, investigators notice Ashley using some of it to pay her husband's bills and the bills of another man.
She had a boyfriend named Brandon Beatty. She was paying some of his business bills.
I own a bar, and she comes in there and like she's friends with the bartenders and like people that come in there were all friends.
It was also learned that she had purchased him a boat and a motorcycle with some of the money that Taylor had asked her to hold on to.
The girl spends money on everybody around me.
Yeah.
Everybody. It's not uncommon for her to spend money on everybody.
We learned during that conversation she had bought or given him multiple guns.
While interviewing people at the bar that Brandon Beatty owns, investigators find a couple of employees who remember Ashley being there and asking some pretty strange questions.
She was talking about somebody she knew and how, she was a bad person and things would just be better if she wasn't around. And I kind of was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, oh, you don't know her. Her name's Taylor. She said, well, how much coke do you think it would take for, somebody to overdose? And I was joking around. I said, probably an 8-ball. I don't know. It was the day before she disappeared. Okay. Ashley always had a firearm in the car. And they were talking about how one night Audrey had shot it, and I was like, oh, well, I've never really shot a gun before, so we went outside, and I shot whichever, I don't even know what the gun looked like now. I think it was black.
At some point during their evening together, Ashley and Audrey go to another bar, where Ashley purchases an 8-ball of cocaine.
She made the comment that she was going to put it in Taylor's beer.
Investigators find video footage of Ashley buying a single beer on the day she's with Taylor.
We believe that Ashley mixed the cocaine into the beer, but more than likely Taylor didn't like it because it would have tasted sweeter. We believe that that was her first attempt to kill her, was to make it look like an overdose.
On August 26, 2019, the trial of Ashley Britt MacArthur begins.
The murder trial had garnered a lot of attention. I mean, this was a big case just due to the circumstances, the twists and turns, and the fact that we had several former law enforcement officers involved in this case. Ashley MacArthur's defense tried to claim that there wasn't going to be a shred of physical evidence to tie their client to the murder of Taylor Wright. However, the prosecution said, you don't need physical evidence because what we'll do for you is we will connect the dots.
The medical examiner testifies about performing an autopsy on Taylor Wright, and her findings paint a picture of Taylor's final moments. There is a perfectly round entrance wound on the back of Taylor's skull, which means that her assailant is standing or walking behind her when they pull the trigger. The bullet enters Taylor's skull at the back. The bullet doesn't have enough force to exit Taylor's skull, but it tries to stop at the top near the front, where it gets stuck. The bullet is from the .38 caliber class of firearm. Ashley MacArthur owns guns of this type, but there are many different makes and models available. Unfortunately, the The bullet is too damaged and corroded to narrow down the identification any further. It's impossible to say which specific gun fired it. Taylor's body is found buried under potting soil and concrete. And the prosecution presents video surveillance footage of Ashley buying potting soil and concrete on Saturday, September 9th, the day after Taylor's disappearance.
The prosecutor did a fantastic job of presenting the evidence because it was all circumstantial. There was no DNA evidence placing Ashley out at the farm. The only thing we had placing her at the farm was her statement and the cell phone data. There was no ballistics data that we could show. There was no way to link Ashley to a gun. We had a bunch of circumstantial evidence, and the bank records and the cell phone records, and a little bit of I wouldn't even call it confession, and just an acknowledgement that she was out at the farm on the day that we believe the homicide took place.
The evidence may be circumstantial, but it all seems to add up to Ashley standing behind Taylor and pulling the trigger.
I know it's silent in a courtroom most of the time, but this silence, you could feel the tension from her family members, from her loved ones. It was just a very kind of eerie moment as we waited for the verdict to be read.
On August 30th, 2019, after 2 hours of deliberation, the jury finds Ashley Britt MacArthur guilty of first-degree murder. She is sentenced to the mandatory 25 years to life in prison.
I think the family and loved ones were as content as they can be, knowing that Ashley would be held responsible, but that's not going to bring Taylor back.
The final verdict was she was found guilty and she was sentenced to life in prison, which was a great relief off of our chest to get closure to Taylor's family. And we were actually able to return Taylor back to her family. Even though her son is going to live without her mother, there at least is some closure there that we were able to help provide.
A torrid affair conducted in secret. A gun makes its way into the wrong hands.
The evidence so far is scanty. There's no unusual fingerprints, no muddy footprints, and no murder weapon.
A .40 caliber farewell that resonates through the streets and homes of a quiet Midwestern city.
This is one of those cases that was unusual. It was all hands on deck.
And a mystery that will consume the authorities and the public alike until a series of shocking revelations finally see the light of day. Independence, Missouri, just to the east of Kansas City. It's a Midwestern town through and through, if largely a suburb of its bigger neighbor.
It's about a quarter of the size, and they don't have a lot of violent crime. In fact, they average about 9 homicides a year.
But many of the residents like to pack a little something extra, just in case. Indeed, Missouri ranks 20th in the U.S. for gun ownership, and nearly half of its 6 million residents are in possession of some kind of firearm. Randy Stone, a 42-year-old insurance agent and Marine veteran, is one of them. It's the afternoon of March 31st, 2010. Randy Stone is in his insurance office. Whether he knows it or not, he isn't alone there today. Randy Stone's wife, Teresa, discovers his body at around 5 o'clock that afternoon.
And she tells police that she gets to their small storefront insurance office where they shared this office together and noticed that the blinds were drawn. And she said that that was odd. The deadbolt was open. She told police that was unusual. She goes inside. All of the lights are off.
I yell. I say, "Honey, where are you?" And I walk into his office and I turn the light on. And, you know, the computer's up. Everything looks fine. I walk into the back room back there and turn the light on. And he's not back there.
Which room is that? The storage?
The storage room, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Then I walk around the corner.
To your office? What do you see?
Walks into her office and finds him dead on the floor.
What did you do once you saw him there?
I kept yelling for him to wake up.
Did you shake?
I didn't touch you.
Okay.
Police headquarters is a 7-minute drive from the office, so responders are on the scene very quickly.
Investigators know they have to find out as much as they can about Randy's life in order to discover who has ended it.
So we know that Randy and Teresa were high school sweethearts. By all accounts, very popular, joined at the hip kind of situation. And everyone kind of assumed right after high school they would get married. Turns out Randy had a different idea. He wanted to join the military and went and did so. Randy was a Marine. And as soon as he got back from his service, sure enough, he and Teresa became husband and wife.
To the Stones, Independence seems an ideal place to raise a family, and they soon have 2 growing children.
Randy and Teresa Stone have separate interests, as couples often will.
Randy enjoys sports, like basketball, and he likes his guns as well. He often goes to his in-laws' property to target shoot, while Teresa raises the children and runs the household.
She appears content to take on all the duties required to keep a family going.
But of course, everyone needs some form of leisure. For Teresa, it seems to be shopping.
Psychologists have established that shopping functions not only as leisure, but also as a way for a person to regain a feeling of control over their lives and to reduce anxiety. We don't know exactly what Teresa is undergoing emotionally in this period, but we know how stressful managing a household can be.
While Randy and Teresa frequently do their own things, they share interests as well. These largely revolve around the New Hope Baptist Church.
It's one of those churches that was described as a very, very close-knit congregation. They shared meals together. It was not unusual for people to spend 3, 4, 5, 6 days or nights a week at this congregation. And Randy and Teresa were incredibly involved.
This level of involvement in the church, especially a church in the Southern Baptist tradition, brings with it a commitment that is nearly total. Randy and Teresa Stone took the idea of serving very literally. The Southern Baptist Convention was created in 1845 when there was a split with the larger Baptist church over slavery. The profound conservatism of the movement appeals to heartland people like the Stones, and that the convention allows individual churches to set their own doctrinal degree appeals in particular to Randy.
Randy volunteers with church treasury work and keeps a close eye on the books.
He was heavily involved in the church finances. As treasurer, he served on the board.
And he teaches Sunday school, where he shares his faith with the children of New Hope.
Teresa sings in the choir and frequently works in the kitchen during church events. By the time they are in their early 40s, their children are nearly grown and in school. With involvement in the church, naturally comes involvement with its pastor, Brother David Love, who arrives there in 1999. Randy and Teresa become close friends with both Brother Love and his wife, Kim.
Pastor Love was a good-looking guy. Very charismatic, very energetic. Everyone loved Pastor Love.
A congregation's perception of pastoral humility and honesty has been found to be a strong predictor of its commitment to the church, especially in smaller churches like the New Hope Baptist Church in Independence. So it's very important that Pastor Love encourages such a perception, and in this he certainly succeeds. And Randy and Teresa Stone feel lucky to have such a man as the head of their church.
It was just a very, very close-knit church community, and Randy and Pastor Love, by all accounts, were what you would consider best friends.
The couple also spends time together at the insurance office, where each has an office of their own.
When couples work together day in and day out, it isn't always a good thing for the marriage, but in this case, it seems to be fairly harmonious.
Not a lot of people can get along great working a few feet from their spouse every day, but they did it, and by all accounts, it seemed to work out just great for the two of them.
The only work-related problem that Teresa reports to investigators involves a strange man who came to the office once when both Teresa and Randy were working, and then another time when only Randy was there.
My husband said he came back once when he was there by himself.
You know who this guy is?
No, we have never seen him
How long
before.
ago was this?
I don't even remember what he was asking for.
Did he look homeless or anything? Or?
Yes, he did. The time he came in, it was very cold because he had on a very heavy coat. I think he had a mustache. He was pretty tall.
Though he never made any specific threats, the Stones consider this man an unwelcome and potentially dangerous presence.
Has this man come into the office a third and final time on this fateful March 31st? Police must find out. After such an encounter, Randy takes it upon himself to have some sort of defense in the building.
What guns do you know that he had here at the office or anywhere?
The only one that I know of that he has was a little bitty thing.
Black gun?
Yes.
That's what you said earlier.
Little bitty thing. It's little.
Where do you keep it?
And I don't even like touching it. I am pretty positive he kept it in the drawer at the back of his credenza.
Unfortunately, on March 31st, 2010, Randy is found dead and defenseless on the floor of his office by his wife, Teresa.
The first officer on the scene happens to be from New Hope Baptist Church, and he knows Randy and Teresa very well. He's stunned by what he finds and does his best to comfort Teresa.
Pastor Love and his wife Kim arrive at the scene of the crime as soon as they hear what has happened. Any concerned church leader would do the same thing. And of course, Teresa's mom and dad, the first people she's called upon discovering Randy's body, get there as soon as they can.
Of course, the uppermost question in everybody's mind is who could have done this? Who would have wanted a stand-up guy like Randy Stone dead?
He hasn't had an affair with someone.
Several years ago, he did.
Randy was killed not by a stranger, but by someone he knew.
One of the biggest pieces of evidence was in a trash can a couple of feet from Randy Stone's body.
The murder of Randy Stone shocks the suburban town of Independence, Missouri. Randy and Teresa Stone, married almost 20 years, are apparently as happy and God-fearing a couple as you might ever meet. One horrible afternoon, Teresa Stone's life changes forever when she finds the body of her husband slumped on the floor of her own office.
And I noticed he wasn't breathing, but I didn't want to touch him. I was
That's fine.
scared.
One of the things police ruled out immediately was suicide. There was no gun found at the scene.
In fact, police do find a gun at the scene, but it's Randy Stone's work gun, and it hasn't been fired.
And you said he has this one small gun. Okay, we found that.
You did?
Yes. No other guns?
No.
Okay.
They also find a hunting knife, but it too has no connection to the crime.
Police rule out robbery as a motive because there's money left on a desk in the office.
Randy Stone also had his wallet in his back pocket. So a robbery seemed out of the question.
Given the position of the body, it seems evident that Randy was killed not by a stranger, but by someone he knew.
They thought from the beginning that whoever killed Randy Stone was probably someone that he knew. They just didn't know who.
But evidence so far is scanty. There's no unusual fingerprints, no muddy footprints, and no murder weapon. But what police do find is a shell casing lying on the ground near Randy Stone's body. And with a little forensic work, a shell casing can tell you a lot.
It appeared Randy had been shot with a .40 caliber.
During their investigation, police check the phone in Randy's office and find something interesting.
Early in the investigation, police learn that the first number that Teresa Stone dialed after finding her husband's body was not 911. It was her parents. They tell her to call the emergency number, and she does. But the question remains, why didn't she call an ambulance right off the bat?
Of course, in a stressful situation, a person might behave in ways that seem odd later on, but it did raise a small flag.
Detectives delve deep into their 8-hour interview with Teresa Stone, and cracks in the facade of her marriage appear quickly.
No affairs on the side or anything like that?
No.
He hasn't had an affair with someone? And just be honest.
Several years ago, he did.
Okay.
But that was right after we got married.
Okay.
That was a long time ago.
And it didn't cause any friction that you guys were wanting to get separated or you never had to leave the residence or anything? No one left the residence or anything?
No, never.
Investigators collect every instance of conflict Randy Stone has in his life, but there aren't many.
Randy Stone had been keeping the books for New Hope. And early in Pastor Love's tenure there, Randy discovers $30,000 missing from a missionary fund.
He was upset about the finances and the way that the finances were being handled. And that was no secret.
Pastor Love is asked to account for it, but angrily denies any wrongdoing. It must have been difficult for Randy to bring it up in the first place, given how much admiration and respect he had for the pastor. And soon, Randy's trust in Pastor Love is regained to the point of having him counsel the Stones when their marriage runs into trouble. That's the sort of person Randy is, a religious man inclined to forgiveness.
Well liked as he is, Randy Stone's funeral is a crowded affair. Friends, family, clients, and well-wishers. And there are a number of additional guests as well.
That day, members of the Independence Police Department were in that church, and they recorded the stirring, beautiful eulogy delivered by Pastor David Love.
You see, there's nothing more that we can do for Randy Stone. Nothing more we can do for him. He'll never have another thought in this body, another emotion, another hunger pain. He'll never be able to sign another policy or kiss his wife on this side of glory. Randy Stone's name was on the sign over his office, Randy Stone Insurance Agency. How many here really know that Teresa was the agent of that place? She was the cement and the glue, wasn't she?
At that point, they weren't sure who was involved in the murder, but they thought it was likely that the murderer would be inside that church. And of course, it turns out they were right.
But everyone Randy Stone knows is in the church today. So who is the killer?
Investigators don't yet know who killed Randy Stone, but when the ballistic reports come in, they at least know what type of gun killed him.
It appeared Randy had been shot with a .40 caliber. The casings from the gun were on the floor, and those were collected as evidence.
Investigators know that Randy Stone likes to target shoot, and they also know how statistically likely it is for someone to be shot with their own gun. So a trip to one of Randy's target shooting ranges seems warranted.
They were able to take some shell casings from one of the shooting ranges that he frequented, and those shell casings from his gun matched the casings at the scene where he was shot and killed.
Spent bullets and casings are as individual as your fingerprint. They're compared under a split-screen microscope by forensic experts to determine whether they came from the same gun.
It turns out those shell casings ended up matching Randy Stone's own .40 caliber weapon.
We know that Randy was killed with his own Glock. We went out to your house or your parents' house and got shell casings, okay? From when he used to target shoot.
The discovery that Randy Stone was killed with his own firearm raises a number of critical questions and gives the investigation an intensely new focus.
So how does Randy Stone come to be shot with his own gun? This is a key question in the investigation. An entire prosecution will rest on it.
You have to remember, Randy Stone was a Marine. He was also a gun enthusiast, and everyone around him said he never ever would have turned his back on anyone in that office that he felt was a threat. It wasn't in his nature. He was a Marine.
I want to know how anybody could get into that office, get that Glock, and shoot your husband. Because we're talking about the former war guy, the Marine. How would anybody get that gun away from him?
I don't know. I have no idea. I keep asking myself that all the time.
Marines follow very strict code on firearms handling. During training, there's a very strong emphasis on marksmanship and weapons handling. They practice weapons handling and dry firing for weeks before they ever shoot a live round. They're taught to secure their weapon, to always know where their weapon is, and to never turn their back on someone who might be their enemy. You get that training like Randy Stone did, and you have it for life.
The man who killed your husband had the gun already. There's no way you could have got that gun away from your husband.
Investigators now discover a new piece of evidence that sends the case ricocheting into yet another surprising direction.
One of the biggest pieces of evidence was in a trash can a couple of feet from Randy Stone's body.
Ex-Marine and insurance agent Randy Stone is murdered in a case that has all of Independence, Missouri abuzz. And although the gun that kills Randy has disappeared, ballistic evidence indicates that the weapon has been owned by Randy himself. Now, newly discovered evidence is about to turn the case on its head.
So detectives, as they're going through the office looking for evidence, look in the trash can feet away from where Randy Stone lies dead. And in that trash can, they find a discarded love letter. And it wasn't crumpled up. There really wasn't even any real attempt to destroy this letter. It was in about 9 pieces. It took some Scotch tape to put the letter back together. This was very clearly a love letter from someone to Teresa Stone.
Initially, in speaking to detectives, Teresa had admitted that her husband had engaged in extramarital affairs. Teresa's urge to highlight her husband's wrongdoing is in fact a common prelude to confessing her own indiscretions. She has to build that little mound of moral high ground before exposing herself. There's no doubt that Teresa is committed to her Christian faith, that she's earnestly dedicated to the church. But human nature is such that the lineament of dedication, of loyalty, of love can become blurred. And this is part of what happens to Teresa.
Police, over several hours of interrogations of Teresa Stone, finally start getting her to admit that this was more than just a secret admirer, that in fact she had had a 10-year love affair with Pastor David Love.
relationship. Your extramarital relationship with David lasted about 10 years.
Yeah.
During
It got stronger as the years went on.
Okay. So it started off as a what type
Just
of
like,
relationship?
you know, close friends, good friends,
Mhm.
you know,
Then it grew to what?
sexual love.
Love. So you guys fell in love.
Yeah.
So we now know this was not an affair that lasted 6 months or a year. They had been seeing each other for almost 10 years.
Where would you guys normally meet when you guys were going to be sexually involved?
Well, we never planned it. When we were deeply involved, I mean, of course I would call him when Randy would leave, you know, and if I knew he was going to be gone for, you know, an hour, then he would come to the office if it was convenient for him.
So we're talking your office?
Yeah.
Farmers? Your home?
Yes.
His home?
Twice. It was harder there.
In his office? The church?
Yes.
Kim Love notices her husband receiving texts on unfamiliar-looking phones. Her suspicions are aroused, and she soon finds her suspicions are justified.
It turns out Kim, the pastor's wife, found several burner phones in their home. The kind of phones that don't have a name attached to them, the kind of phones that are very difficult to trace. And she didn't just find one phone. She found multiple phones in the home. And those phones, we now know, were used between Pastor Love and Teresa Stone to conceal their 10-year affair.
Teresa claims that matters come to a head about 2 weeks before the murder on St. Patrick's Day, when David Love and his wife show up at the office.
Pastor walked in, and Randy said, Pastor, I really don't have anything to say to you. I really don't.
This is when the secrets come out. There's no doubt about the affair between Teresa and David. And now, David Love wants to talk about Randy's own past indiscretions with other women, and more recently, with pornography.
He starts talking to him about his internet problem, you know, his pornography problem, his, you know, stuff like that. And Randy said, that's all behind us. You know, we've gotten over that.
This is all stuff he and the Stones had talked about in their counseling sessions. And to bring it up now just compounds the betrayal. Kim Love, who has long suspected her husband, is just plain angry.
Didn't you and the wife have words out?
Yeah. I told her that she wasn't a very good wife, pastor's wife.
Investigators soon uncover more of Teresa's strange activity on the day of the murder.
And one of the admissions that investigators gently pry from Teresa is that after the discovery of Randy's body, she went to the bathroom of a local rental car agency and destroyed the burner phone that Pastor Love had given her.
After you found your husband, you left the crime scene to go to the bathroom, and while you were there, you destroyed a phone. You know what that looks like?
I know.
How are we going to explain that?
Not the actions of a completely innocent person.
On the day after Randy's murder, Teresa has a conversation that strikes investigators as strange.
Detectives knew that she had been asking a lot of questions about Randy Stone's life insurance policies. Even in the day after her husband's murder, she was asking about the life insurance policies, which seemed very odd for a grieving widow less than 24 hours after her husband's death.
Pastor Love's behavior had been odd as well. The very day after Randy Stone's body was found, the pastor gets a call from an old friend who asks him how he's holding up after the death of a friend and congregant. Like a river glorious, David Love says, quoting the title of an old and cherished hymn. In interviews, detectives repeatedly refer to the idea of confession being good for the soul. They know that, say, in Catholic culture, confession occurs in a small chamber in virtual secret, while other strains of Christian belief, including Teresa's, hold that confession, like faith itself, ought to be shouted from the rooftops. But Teresa's faith has been exploited by Pastor Love.
He kept throwing Bible verses up at me, and what other Bible characters did in the Bible. and how they murdered and God still blessed them and stuff like that. And I was like, and I kept telling him, I'm like, that was then. This is now.
And in the interrogation room, Teresa Stone is finally circling closer to the truth.
You told your parents specifically that Randy had been shot. You told the 911 operator you think he might have fallen. You never told him that he had been shot. You kept that to yourself. When you talked to the ambulance dispatcher, the person who needs to know what's going on there medically, you never told him that he'd been shot. If somebody told you that he was shot because you knew he'd been shot, and you didn't want us to know that.
He sent me a text and told me.
Who did? Say it. Brother Love.
He sent me a text and told me not to go to the office.
Teresa finally recognizes this man for what he is.
He said that he would kill for me. He said, I will do anything for you.
Police have no shortage of questions for Teresa Stone. Why had she destroyed her phone the night of the murder? Why had she been so concerned with Randy's life insurance? And why hadn't she called police immediately on learning what David Love had done? But for now, Teresa is happy to incriminate David Love while maintaining her own innocence.
I am not going to protect him anymore.
Finally, investigators have something close to confirmation of the killer's identity. But their suspect, it turns out, has left town.
Randy Stone had his suspicions about his own wife.
They learned the shocking lengths to which Pastor Love was willing to go.
It's no wonder that Randy never saw it coming.
A mysterious murder rocks a Missouri town, but the sordid story behind it is even more shocking.
If you know something and you don't confess now, I'm telling you, you're not going to be able to get through this.
A bereaved wife tells part of what she knows.
When I was on my way back to the office, after I dropped Miranda off at the house, he sent me a text and told me, he said, seriously urgent, do not go back to the office by yourself.
Randy Stone and David Love were friends. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that at least at one time, Randy considered Pastor Love his best friend. It's no wonder that Randy never saw it coming.
He said he walked to the office and he just aimed and didn't even look.
He said he did that?
That's what he told me.
So he said he pulled the trigger?
He said he just aimed and didn't even look. He just did it.
The detective's suspicions about David Love are now nearly confirmed after many slow and grueling hours in the interrogation room.
I've always thought of him as an honest man.
Well, you know he's not an honest man because he's had an affair with one of his congregation members for almost 10 years.
And with the confirmation of Love's guilt, even experienced detectives are stunned at the depth of the pastor's betrayal of his friend, his church, and his God.
We look to this casket, the body here, and all the flowers, the things gathered around, we say, but we anticipated he would grow old. We anticipated that we'd do more things together. What's with the word anticipation and death being swallowed up in victory? How could this be good at all?
Investigators are happy to finally hear Teresa confess what David Love told her, but there's still a lot left to confirm. What part did Teresa herself play in the crime? Where exactly is the gun that killed Randy Stone? And where is Love, who no longer seems to be at the church or even living in Independence?
Teresa Stone finally admits that, according to Pastor Love, he drives the gun 20 miles out of town and throws it where nobody will ever find it. And nobody ever does.
He told you he was taking the gun 20 miles away?
That's what he told me.
He was going to take it? Did he tell you where?
No, he said he took it 20 miles away.
And as it turns out, David Love himself, along with his wife Kim, has moved to another state, where the former pastor is working as a truck driver.
The lead detective travels to South Carolina with another officer, and they have David Love's supervisor call him into the office, supposedly to sign some paperwork.
Much of David Love's behavior indicates some degree of narcissistic personality disorder, so it's no surprise he doesn't expect to be tracked down in this way. Finding detectives waiting for him in the depot office is a total surprise to him.
Immediately after seeing the officers, Pastor Love appears to turn and flee, and officers give chase.
Detectives have seen this kind of reaction from suspects before. If they have any doubt of David Love's guilt, his behavior today dispels it.
As it turns out, however, Pastor Love is not attempting to flee. He just wanted to pick up his wife so their car wouldn't be left behind at the depot when he went away with the police. Pastor Love is returned to Missouri without further incident.
Meanwhile, Teresa's strategy throughout her interrogations is to minimize her own involvement by stressing things she truly hadn't done, while trying to rhetorically ignore the actual questions detectives are asking. This is a common strategy learned by most people in childhood, and Teresa, it turns out, is very good at answering questions the detectives aren't asking.
This whole line of questioning just seems to make you very uncomfortable.
In the interviews, she constantly speaks about how much she hates guns, even though no one has accused her of pulling the trigger.
Questions about the guns, when we talk about guns, I mean, you seem to be very uncomfortable when we talk about them.
I don't like them. I don't like to talk about them. I don't like guns. I don't like to touch them.
Having committed to blaming her former lover, Teresa goes all in, hoping that once he's been fed whole to the detectives, they'll be satisfied. But if that's what she thinks, she doesn't know homicide detectives.
A brutal murder in Middle America. Irrefutable evidence that what may start as the most heartfelt of emotions can curdle into the most heartless of crimes and become a startling saga of sin and secrecy, leading to an investigation and a capture, but with one essential angle still unconfirmed.
So at this point, police know all about the affair, and now Teresa Stone knows that they know about the affair. But what they didn't have was that final piece of the puzzle connecting Teresa Stone directly to the murder.
The key now is to get Teresa to admit that she helped Love access the weapon, which makes her an accessory to her husband's murder, if not the instigator of it.
The man who killed your husband had the gun already. There's no way you could have got that gun away from your husband. The gun was passed off to him is what I'm trying to tell you. Only you would have been able to do that.
No, I don't touch guns. I don't like them.
At this point, it doesn't matter how much Teresa insists she didn't ever touch guns. With David Love on his way in for his own interrogation, police have a powerful lever with which to pry the last few secrets out of her.
I think Brother Love is going to break down like a cheap shotgun. I think he is going to spill his guts in about record time. I would bet 30 minutes. And he will tell us everything he knows.
David Love is brought in and interrogated by investigators.
If you want to invoke your right to an attorney and not answer any of my questions, that's your right. That's your right to do that.
I feel like I have to because I don't know why wouldn't I have an attorney because I don't know what I'm facing.
With Brother Love in the building for questioning, the detectives use this to press Teresa even more.
David's in custody and he's talking. Okay? Right now is your chance, and you probably have about 10 minutes to tell us everything that's going on with this. When did David get the gun? That's the most important thing right now.
How did he get his hands on Randy's gun?
I don't know.
That's the question I need to have answered.
I don't know.
Why don't you know, Teresa? Do you not want to tell me? Do you think it implicates you if you say, I made the gun available to him. I didn't know what he was going to do. I had no idea David was going to shoot Randy. I made sure he got the gun, though. You didn't make him go in there and pull that trigger. But you provided him the means of doing it.
I did not give him the gun.
You gave him access to Randy's gun.
The only thing that I can think of is that he went in our house while we were not at home and got in the safe and got the gun.
David Love has access to your house.
I am trying to be honest.
You don't have to try to be, Teresa. You know more.
I am being honest.
Teresa, you know more than you've told them.
No, I don't.
They know more than you're telling them.
She soon admits that she has, in fact, given Brother Love the combination needed to open Randy Stone's gun safe.
He has a combination to the safe.
And you gave it to him?
Well, I was down there one time with him when I was getting into it.
When you were getting into the safe?
Yeah.
So you gave him the combination to the safe?
Well, he watched me open it, so yeah, I guess I did.
You were standing right there while you were opening the safe? Mm-hmm. So you gave him the combination to the safe? Pretty much.
Yeah.
Teresa Stone may not have pulled the trigger, but providing the gun is textbook conspiracy to murder behavior. And from Teresa, they learned the shocking lengths to which Pastor Love was willing to go. Apparently, he had plans for his wife, Kim.
First time he talked about it is he said that he wished he could just break her neck and put her in her car and send her over a cliff. He said one time when they were out on a trip that he thought about rolling his car and trying to make it look like, her neck broke in the rolling of the car or something like that.
The more investigators look into the weeks leading up to Randy Stone's murder, the more obvious the killer's motive becomes.
One of the things police found on Randy Stone's computer in the days prior to his murder, he told Pastor David Love they were severing all ties with the church. And it was a final email. And in fact, he said something to the effect in one of the final emails to Pastor David Love, "You don't need to contact me about this." The emails were really concrete evidence that he was stepping away completely from that church. And of course, his wife, Teresa Stone, didn't want any of that to happen. She was in love with Pastor Love.
And this is not the only motive that lingers with investigators.
One of the bizarre aspects of this case is Teresa's just insistence on learning more about this life insurance policy. And even within 24 hours of the murder, she's asking a friend about the life insurance. And he thought that was odd. He looks into it and says to her, "Did you not know? Your husband moved you off of those policies quite a while back. He actually removed you as the beneficiary and added the 2 children as the beneficiaries to that life insurance." And prosecutors argued this goes to show you that Randy Stone had his suspicions about his own wife by removing her from that life insurance and not even telling her. They worked at a life insurance office together.
Investigators finally have the case wrapped up. Now the wheels of justice begin to grind.
Despite the fact that this was one of the biggest cases in Independence police history, there was no splashy trial here. Pastor David Love was offered a plea and for quite some time rejected the plea deal. Wasn't going to do it. And then finally toward the end, they both knew that police had them. They knew. And Pastor David Love agreed to admit to his role in this crime. He stood up in open court. The judge asked him, "Did you knowingly shoot and kill Randy Stone?" And Pastor Love replied, "Yes." Pastor Love took the plea, was sentenced to life in prison, where he sits to this day.
With David Love put away for life, the beam of justice turns on Teresa Stone. Teresa weeps and tells the court how sorry she is to have been, as she puts it, quote, "caught up in these bad choices that led to the death of my husband."
In a development that surprises some, Teresa and Randy's children plead for mercy for their mother, despite understanding very well what she's done. Her son Michael also laments the bad choices his mother's made, while daughter Miranda tells the judge that as hard as it is to lose her father, to lose her mother also will be even harder.
Despite the pleas of the children, Teresa Stone is in fact sentenced to prison time.
And you have to remember, without Teresa Stone, there is no murder of Randy Stone. She provided the motive, the gun, the fake alibis. Without Teresa, none of this happens. She serves 8 years and is walking free today.
And so, Teresa Stone, who in the end admits to prosecutors that she sent a text explicitly asking David Love to kill her husband, wins her parole after serving just over half her sentence. A Texan beauty queen and a handsome Texan oil tycoon.
They become a power couple, two of the beautiful people.
How can something so right go so wrong?
Jimmy Jost was shot 13 times by a Glock 9mm handgun.
When love dies, sometimes it dies hard.
She and the son were gone, and people feared maybe it was a murder kidnapping.
These people are in big trouble.
And everything's bigger in Texas.
The investigation involves state police, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Secret Service.
Austin, the capital city of the Lone Star State, Texas.
Austin is perhaps the most liberal area of Texas, and it also happens to be the state capital.
It's one of the most populous and fastest growing cities in the USA, and it's been growing since the Ice Age. Early inhabitants of the area identified in 9200 BC. Today, Austin has the nickname Silicon Hills because of its thriving tech and innovation industry. It's been voted one of the best cities to start a business and one of the best places for female entrepreneurs.
If you're looking for entertainment, you don't have to go past the Austin city limits to enjoy great music.
A place of warmth and natural beauty, it's a green oasis and has the characteristics of the desert, the tropics, and a wetter climate all combined. Austin entrepreneur and socialite high flyer Rhonda Glover is missing. On Sunday, July 25th, 2004, her aunt drops by Rhonda's home to see if she can make contact with her niece.
Rhonda Glover's aunt had come to Austin. She tried to get hold of Rhonda at the house. No answer. Went by there. Jimmy's car was there. There was still no answer.
She finds the garage door and a utility door open. But what she smells emanating from the house has her scrambling to call 911.
This smell is unlike anything she's ever smelled before. It's the smell of death.
Austin Police Department are deployed to a home on Mission Oaks Boulevard in southwest Austin.
This is a very upscale neighborhood.
The house was like any other pleasant, upscale home in any contemporary American suburb. It wasn't overly ostentatious. It's like a normal suburban house of a middle-income family.
Police are warned that the unlocked doors are very out of character for these homeowners. The aunt fears something is dreadfully wrong within this idyllic home.
Officers enter the home and they're immediately assaulted by a foul odor. There are also large insects crawling all over the home, and this indicates to them that there's likely a dead body.
For homicide detectives, they know the smell of death. When those first two cops responded, they knew someone was dead in that home.
As the two Austin police officers move up the stairs, the offensive odor increases in intensity. On the second floor, officers find the decomposing body of a male victim lying in the hallway near the doorway of his upstairs bedroom.
The victim is male, and he's been shot to death.
Then police give the aunt the news.
Death notifications are difficult under any circumstance and are extremely traumatic for family. In this case, police need to get very pressing information from the aunt. Given the state of the home, it's not an appropriate place for the conversation, so they do the best they can with the circumstances.
The aunt tells police who resides in the mansion.
A well-known Texan lives there with his partner, her niece, the famous beauty queen Rhonda Glover. It's one of many of their upscale homes.
The aunt feels certain that the victim is oil man James Jost.
James Jimmy Jost is born in Dallas, Texas. Jimmy grows up in the Memorial area of Houston and graduates from Memorial High School. Then he attends the University of Texas in Austin.
Jimmy was an oil millionaire entrepreneur.
The Jost family oil money goes back 3 generations. Jimmy's inspiration comes from his grandfather, who is known as a wildcatter, a term for an oil man who drills exploratory wells in territory that's not already known to be an oil field.
Jimmy inherits the family wildcatter spirit. He's always searching for the next big oil strike or the latest oil drilling technique.
In the 1980s, he employs horizontal drilling, as it is becoming the very latest technique to reach hard-to-tap oil reserves. The move pays off.
Jimmy is a man who inherits millions from his family and then goes on to build his own fortune from pioneering oil and gas drilling technology.
Handsome and charming, innovative and hardworking, Jimmy Jost is a titan in the Texas oil and gas industry.
Jimmy Jost had a roller coaster career as a multi-millionaire oil magnate and entrepreneur. He rode the market like a plastic pony in front of the grocery store. When it was up, he was up. When it was down, he was down. But he always came back.
He is also a socialite, known for fabulous dinner parties that Jimmy prepares.
Friends describe Jimmy Jost as a great guy, a good, loyal friend.
He is a warm host and loves to make people laugh. He has countless friends in Houston, many of them oil men.
He was calm, he was confident, he was polite, courteous, and he had a calming influence on other people. He was nonviolent and very charming. Women loved him.
There always seems to be beautiful women in his circles. They're frequenting the most upscale restaurants and bars. Jimmy always seems to be in the center of the fun.
Jimmy likes to spread his wealth around. There are legendary stories about him giving generous tips to waiters and picking up huge tabs. Even though he's wealthy, Jimmy isn't a snob. He's interested in people from all walks of life. He was known to invite the valet or the waiter to his parties.
His longtime partner is a former Miss Houston beauty queen, Rhonda Glover, who runs her own recruiting business. Jimmy and Rhonda have a 9-year-old son together. Detectives search the mansion for clues. Shell casings from 6 bullets are found near the body, and an additional 4 shell casings are recovered in the bedroom.
At first glance, Jost is found on his back, near the doorway to the bedroom, and there's blood spatter. A search warrant is obtained, and police don't waste any time. Crime scene specialists are deployed.
There is blood in the hallway, as well as the bedroom. and an increased blood concentration soaked into the carpet where Jost goes to the ground.
It looks like he tries to flee and isn't able to make it.
All of these blood spots found on the surfaces will be subject to an analysis by a blood spatter expert. As many friends as Jost has, it's conceivable he also has enemies. He's incredibly wealthy, and maybe this is an oil deal gone bad.
Police search the property for evidence of a possible robbery, but there are no signs of forced entry, and nothing seems to be missing from the home.
Jimmy has a very beautiful partner, and he's used to Rhonda turning heads. That right there could make some people envious.
When the body of Jimmy Jost is found, Rhonda Glover and her son are missing. The fear is that they've been kidnapped. Perhaps they're going to be held for ransom.
With Jimmy brutally slain and his wife and young child missing, what could have happened to Jimmy Jost and his family? Could they have been abducted by his killer?
The quest now is find Rhonda and find her son. Rhonda did not give up her interactions with other gentlemen aside from Jimmy. And Jimmy was rather possessive.
The sheer number of bullets could indicate rage by the shooter, or maybe an excessive fear of Jimmy Jost.
According to Rhonda, there are two sides to Jimmy.
You know, there's a group of devil worshippers, and I'm just a lonely girl, and people think I'm crazy.
Mega-rich Texas oil heir Jimmy Jost is found murdered in the mansion he shares with his partner, former beauty queen Rhonda Glover.
Jimmy Jost was shot by a Glock 9mm handgun, 6 shots below the waistband of his shorts.
His body is badly decomposing, and police gather evidence to try to understand what happened at the crime scene. But when police discover Rhonda Glover has been missing since March, they fear she too may be a victim of Jimmy Jost's killer.
She and the son were gone, and people were feared perhaps this was a kidnapping case. Maybe it was a murder-kidnapping, and so they were searching for Rhonda.
But actually, there's trouble in paradise.
Rhonda's aunt tells police that neither parent is supposed to have custody of the boy.
The aunt comes looking for Rhonda because no one's heard or seen from her for several months. But she knows Rhonda and Jimmy have an on-again, off-again relationship, so what she thinks is that perhaps the couple is reconciled, and Rhonda just forgot to let her know.
Police canvass the area, and no one has seen anyone other than a friendly white male, presumably Jimmy Jost, coming in and out. One neighbor recalls seeing Jost's garage door open on Thursday. Another recalls seeing the garage door open on either Monday or Tuesday. The garage door being unlocked is so unusual, a neighbor walks over and knocks on the door to check on Jimmy, but no one answers, so she leaves.
The neighbor confirms that Jost did have various house sitters from time to time. But how well did he know these house sitters? Police need to track down exactly who's been at the mansion lately.
Police survey the area to see if there are any surveillance cameras in the vicinity.
This is a gated community. Perhaps there's a list of who's come and gone.
Officers determine that access codes to this gated community aren't personalized, and there's no way of tracking who comes in or out of the area.
It gets worse. There are also no cameras to monitor who's coming and going.
The Travis County Appraisal District information reveals the home on Mission Oaks is owned by Rhonda Glover, and utility records also show an active account in Glover's name for that same residence.
So the home does not belong to the victim. It's actually one of the many gifts he's given Rhonda.
Rhonda Glover is a small-town Texas girl who gets her start by winning big prizes in rodeo beauty competitions.
Rhonda Glover was an attractive, vivacious beauty queen and rodeo queen. She was quite active in the rodeo circuit. I mean, she wasn't a bull rider, but, you know, you could be a rodeo beauty and a beauty queen.
And that famous beauty catapults her out of her small-town world and into the stratosphere of upscale Texan glamour.
She had a great personality, and she was a charming person to be around.
She competes in bigger and bigger beauty pageants across the state, and she's a contestant for Miss Houston.
She doesn't win the crown, but she does meet a lot of rich Texan men who are intrigued by her beauty and charm.
In 1989, a Texan real estate mogul takes Rhonda to a party.
But it's a terrible date. She keeps staring at a man at the party who's got a lot of charm and charisma.
Her date comments that it's rude to stare at other men when they're together, but Rhonda admits that she just can't keep her eyes off the man across the room.
And that man turns out to be Jimmy Jost.
The next day, the real estate agent happens to run into Jimmy, whom he'd never met before. He tells Jimmy how awful his date the night before was. This is how the two men begin what becomes their greatest friendship. And it's also how the door gets opened for Rhonda to meet Jimmy.
Not long afterwards, Rhonda Glover and Jimmy Jost are introduced. There's an immediate attraction between the two, and they begin dating.
Rhonda is renowned for her sexual prowess, and Jimmy is completely smitten by her. It doesn't take long for them to get serious and move in together.
He was a perfect match for beauty queen Rhonda Glover. If you ever met Rhonda, you'd know immediately she was energetic, enthusiastic, outgoing, and a real charmer. And great fun. She and Jimmy hit it off immediately.
They become a power couple, and both make a lot of money. They move in high society and attend glamorous events with the Texas oil crowd. They don't marry, but on October 24th, 1994, the couple have a child together.
The baby doesn't slow down their high-flying lives. Jimmy and Rhonda continue to live it up.
Jimmy buys Rhonda her own house in Austin, several cars, and though he usually gives her tens of thousands a month to cover her cost, he once famously writes her a check for $1 million to use for spending money. Although he's a wildcatter, a daring entrepreneur, and a fun-loving life-of-the-party type, he's passive when it comes to Rhonda. She's the one in charge. But years pass since the two fall in love, and now they are known to drink and to get into big arguments. In fact, the police have been deployed to the mansion on Mission Oaks Boulevard on more than a dozen occasions because of domestic troubles.
Rhonda did not give up her interactions with other gentlemen aside from Jimmy. And Jimmy was rather possessive. He was never violent with her, quite the opposite. He always forgave her. Said she could basically do whatever she wanted. He just was crazy about her anyway.
By the end of 2003, the money's dwindling, and their regular fighting and occasional drug use leads Rhonda's mother to fight for and win custody of their child.
Jimmy Jost's brother calls police with information he thinks they need to know. He tells authorities that the owner of a popular shooting range has told him that Rhonda Glover is recently there, taking shooting lessons and practicing at the shooting range.
Police also discover that Rhonda rents a recreational vehicle on July 21st, just days before the murder.
Police issue a nationwide alert for Rhonda Glover.
The former beauty queen, once thought to be a possible victim, is now a person of interest in the murder of her partner, oil tycoon Jimmy Jost.
Police learn that murdered oil tycoon Jimmy Jost's longtime relationship to Rhonda Glover is on the rocks. The victim's brother tells police that Rhonda Glover recently buys a handgun and is learning how to shoot. When police can't locate Glover, they put out a nationwide alert to find the former beauty queen. The autopsy reveals that Jimmy Jost dies of multiple gunshot wounds. A total of 13 gunshot wounds to Jost's chest, abdomen, arm, and groin areas, with 3 exit wounds, indicate he is shot 10 times.
The angle of at least one of the bullet wounds indicates that the victim was shot while lying on the ground.
The sheer number of bullets could indicate rage by the shooter, or maybe an excessive fear of Jimmy Joss.
The shell casings are determined to have been fired from a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
At least one bullet goes through him and into the wall while he's moving down the hallway, which causes the high-velocity impact stains found on the walls.
Police put a trace on Rhonda's cell phone.
They feel pretty confident that Rhonda is going to use that cell phone eventually.
On Tuesday, July 27th, Kansas Highway Patrol officers tracked signals from Glover's cell phone to an RV parked outside a truck stop in Hayes.
Rhonda Glover is located wearing a yellow sundress in a store buying milk.
That is when the ATF became involved. It turned out Rhonda Glover was not honest in filling out her ATF form when she purchased the gun.
She is taken into custody and charged with falsifying her address on a firearm application, which is a federal crime. At first, police don't reveal that the body of Jimmy Jost has been found.
I'm not here to talk to you about one of your custody. Okay, you're in custody for a federal violation.
What did I do?
It involves firearms and it was handled through the ATF.
I just don't know what's going on.
Okay, I understand.
I was on vacation with my son. So I'm just...
Where did you go?
We went to... I was going to go on audition for a Nashville show. I'm a singer. And so I had my guitar and my piano with me. And I chickened out going out there. And then I went to Austin because I have a home that I sold to my ex. And he gave me $100,000 equity on it, and he wanted to keep the house. And he was worshiping the devil, and told my mother that that Lucifer was going to come into my son and become the Holy Spirit. So when all this devil worshiping stuff started coming out, I got away from him. I wanted nothing to do with him. He scares the crap out of me.
Rhonda tells police the last time she saw Jimmy was 3 months ago.
I read the thing about a homicide, and it said it took place at Mission Oaks house. I thought maybe Jimmy killed somebody there. Did he kill somebody? Did you find a body there? Because that's what I'm thinking.
Well, yeah, we did find a body.
Police interview Rhonda for about an hour while she talks about how bad a person Jimmy is.
Try to convince me that he was going to become God. You know, because in Revelation it says that God is going to come, he's chosen a man, and he's going to come and walk with us and be our God. Okay? So Jimmy had me convinced that it was going to be him.
She became convinced that Jimmy was the devil and that God had sent her on a mission.
I met a guy who told me that I needed to probably get a gun. And so I went and took a handgun safety course with my son.
She bought the gun on June 24th, 2004. Then she promptly went to take shooting lessons at the shooting range not far from where she lived.
I've got to tell you, you need to protect yourself. You need to protect yourself. And so I went to Reds and practiced with a 19, a Glock 19. A Glock 19, yeah. And he said, that's the best gun for you. He said, everybody buys the 9mm, or they fit in your hand easy. Well,
detectives continue to press Rhonda about her actions on July 21st.
She finally breaks down and confesses.
I did do it. I did. He came after me. I did do it. Okay. I wanted to get my camping equipment from the house. I went to the house, and I took my gun with me, and I was upstairs in the attic getting all my camping stuff, and I heard the garage door open. He came at me, and we struggled, and I got to my briefcase, and I got the gun, and he hit me She wanted to hit me on the head with it. With the gun. He didn't get it. I had it in my hand. He hit me like this, okay? And I had my hand off the trigger. I was holding on to it because I took a defensive class with this guy, Rico. Okay? I kicked him off at me, and he got up, and he was coming through. I was in the bedroom, and he was coming at me. And he was screaming, "I'll kill you," in this demonic voice, just like Satan was. And I just emptied the gun, and I ran.
She originally claimed he was strangling her and she had to defend herself. But he wasn't shot at that close range of him strangling her.
The black man shot, what we saw, was an indication that you may have shot while you were actually in the home.
No. I shot him from the bedroom. I did not move an inch. I was scared to death.
Rhonda Glover is charged with first-degree murder. Her bail is set at $1 million.
A search of Rhonda's rented RV reveals a 9mm handgun. Firearms examiners test-fire the handgun and determine that it is the weapon used to kill Jimmy Jost. Police also find a business card for a second shooting range.
Police asked the shooting range to tell them a little bit about their dealings with Rhonda.
In May 2004, he first instructs Rhonda Glover in the use of firearms.
She kept telling me about an ex that she had and that they were having a rocky relationship, and she was afraid and wanted to learn how to shoot to defend herself.
She rents a handgun, and he teaches her the double tap, the technique of gently and quickly pulling a trigger twice in rapid succession.
Rhonda purchases her own 9mm handgun.
On July 10th, Rhonda Glover returns, purchases ammunition, and proceeds straight to the practice range and requests advanced firearms training.
Rhonda wants to learn and talk about scenarios that go beyond your basic self-defense situations.
Then she scheduled a defensive lesson. A defensive lesson is when we allow the student to holster and carry additional magazines, and we teach them how to draw from concealment, how to use a weapon while moving.
She asks to learn how to make sure there are no intruders in the home. She fears that people may be in her house when she's not around. She draws a floor plan and learns how to flush out intruders.
Instead of doing my regular defensive lesson, she wanted to simulate her house.
And she did mention the exact scenario of him coming up the stairs, her being in the bedroom.
She wants to do something to an upstairs bedroom. And she says, in this upstairs bedroom, there's an attic door. She wanted to practice shooting to the left side of the bed and then shooting the attic door, which would be in the right corner of the room as you entered the bedroom. And that's the scenario she wanted to practice.
She asks, how should she shoot someone who's sitting on the sofa? Her instructor has a problem with that. It doesn't sound defensive to him.
It's like, well, why would, if somebody was breaking into your house, why would somebody be sitting on your couch?
But when she wants to know how to go around the front of the couch and shoot him again to make sure he's dead, that's when the instructor says, that's when you call 911.
So right there, I'm thinking, well, she sounds to me like she's talking about somebody specifically. I mean, for you to want to go around and shoot somebody a second time, to me, you must have some kind of anger towards somebody. And I was like, hey, this lady's really starting to creep me out.
Rhonda Glover practices and catches on fast. She comes to the range on the day of the murder and practices shooting her gun.
When she came in on the 21st, how was her demeanor?
She come in, and then she went to the restroom and changed.
And how was she dressed then? Just...
That's kind of strange, because she came out and she was wearing some biker stuff. She had chaps, leather chaps.
She is told by her instructor she's made tremendous improvement.
She showed a lot of improvement from the first time she came in to the second time that I shot with her. Because I want to say that she got all her shots in the, in the torso area of that target.
Rhonda says Jimmy has fooled everyone into believing he's a nice guy, but Rhonda knows the truth.
In May 2004, Rhonda tells a friend that Joss is involved in child pornography and that he has sexually abused her son.
She kept calling him Satan, and she needed to get rid of Satan.
Why was she calling him Satan?
Because she felt that he was Satan. She felt he was involved in child pornography.
But Jost's best friend tells detectives that Jimmy worships Rhonda, provides for her like a wife, and supplies her with lavish homes, cars, cash, and kindness.
According to Rhonda, there are two sides to Jimmy. One is the gregarious friend, the life of the party that most people know, and then there's the darker side, the one that only she knows.
I'm held on to this information. I'm so scared of them. You know, there's a group of devil worshippers, and I'm just a lonely girl, and people think I'm crazy.
When Jimmy Jost is murdered and his partner Rhonda Glover goes missing, police put out a nationwide alert to find her. Her cell phone is traced, and Rhonda is caught and charged with first-degree murder. But Rhonda tells police that her partner is an abuser and that she kills him to protect her and their child. Rhonda tells officers that she only kills Jimmy Jost to save her own life.
He has hurt me before, and I'm very scared of him, and this is not premeditated. This is just to protect me.
But it's not the first time she's made serious complaints. In fact, Rhonda calls 911 on a regular basis.
In the year before Jost's death, Rhonda Glover frequently calls 911 in fear and panic. Police investigate over and over and find nothing.
She would call the police at least 3 to 4 times a week saying Jimmy had killed someone and buried them in the backyard, or there were bodies in the walls.
Police have labeled her an EDP, or emotionally disturbed person. This designation alerts law enforcement that the individual is genuinely experiencing distress, to approach with caution, and that perhaps the best results can be achieved by applying de-escalation techniques.
Police reports, rehab records, and personal accounts all describe the erratic actions and body language of former beauty queen Rhonda Glover.
She alleges that Jimmy is a devil worshiper who partners to build and operate an underground tunnel stretching throughout the city in which mass child sex torture and murder occurs.
Officers responding to 911 calls are very familiar with Rhonda Glover's regular calls.
On one 911 call, officers arrived to Rhonda Glover, still talking to 911, reporting on the demons in the walls of her home.
Paranoid delusions were part and parcel of Rhonda's regular daily routine. The police were so used to her calling almost every day with another paranoid delusion that like, here we go again, and they send out the community officer not to arrest anybody, but to counsel her, to calm her down, because they were very familiar with her.
But there appears to be one stable influence in Rhonda's life, her partner, James Jimmy Jost.
Officers asked Joss if Rhonda Glover is a danger to him, herself, or anyone else. And Joss assures authorities, definitively saying he is not in danger from Rhonda.
When he would always tell the police, she's not a danger to me, she's not a danger to herself, I can handle her. And he could, for many years.
Jimmy Jost remains steadfastly devoted to Rhonda Glover, even though her presence causes distance from many of his friends.
Rhonda Glover told authorities she was bipolar. However, according to her medical records, which she allowed me to obtain, it said that she had psychosis NOS, which means not otherwise specified. She's a very bright woman, but the mental health issues obscure that and gets her out of focus, shall we say.
But does her condition make her totally unreliable? Is there truth to her claims about Jimmy's violence toward her?
Jost recently offers Rhonda a $350,000 engagement ring that she refuses.
Perhaps money isn't her only concern. Is it possible that his devotion to her borders on obsession and that he is dangerous?
A packed memorial service is held for Jimmy Jost at St. Martin's Episcopal Church. He's celebrated by many friends who miss Jimmy's gregarious, generous spirit.
No one there can believe that Jimmy is a dangerous man.
But Rhonda gets her day in court.
In early 2006, Rhonda Glover faces a Travis County, Texas jury of 9 women and 3 men.
She tells the story of the day she shoots her partner and the father of their child. It's a story that shocks those who love and know Jimmy Jost.
During her trial, Rhonda Glover tells the court that on the day of the murder of Texas oil tycoon Jimmy Jost, she hoped she wouldn't run into Jimmy.
She has been deliberately avoiding Jost for months because he drinks too much and beats her.
She testifies that she goes to the Southwest Austin house with the purpose of dropping off her handgun and picking up some camping gear needed for a trip to Nashville she has planned with their child. She tucks her 9mm semi-automatic handgun into the back of her pants.
She says the gun purchase is preventative. Her thinking is that if he knows she has a gun, he'll stop stalking her. On the day of the killing, she had it on her in case she was ambushed by her former lover.
Rhonda says that at the time, she didn't believe Jimmy was in the home, but he walks in, surprising her. They begin to argue, and he grabs her throat, choking her. She fears for her life.
She says she had occasion, unfortunately, to pull out the hidden gun and start firing. She says the firing just perpetuated. Rhonda is tearful as she says, I shot him. I shot him because I thought he was going to kill me.
She tells the jury that Jost is dangerously obsessed with her. He has an outgoing public persona, but a dark, private one.
Rhonda's defense says she is a victim of abuse and has finally fought back.
Will the jury find her version of the events plausible?
She originally claimed he was strangling her and she had to defend herself. But he wasn't shot at that close range of him strangling her. No, it was that far away. Far enough away for him to be taken by surprise and taken down by 13 bullets.
The prosecution isn't buying it. They have strong words for Rhonda Glover. They call her testimony a prefabricated story and tell the jury she's crying crocodile tears. They even bring up her drug and alcohol use.
Prosecution calls several of Jimmy Jost's friends to answer Glover's testimony that Jost beats her.
They all testify that Jimmy was gentle with an aggressive woman and accuse Rhonda of lying.
Numerous stories come out discussing Rhonda's violence and delusions.
There's a gripping story of how Rhonda attacks Jimmy at a barbecue and knocks him down, punches him, and has to be dragged off him.
But Rhonda Glover does not appear to be so off balance that she is incapable of calculating her personal gain with Jimmy Jost.
Circumstances have changed. Jimmy's great fortune that he seems to have gladly handed over to her over the past 15 years in the form of cash and jewelry and property and other gifts, it's considerably shrunk.
The prosecution says that with Jimmy's fortune dwindling, Rhonda wanted to get her hands on the payout from Jimmy's large life insurance policy.
Prosecutors say Rhonda Glover carefully plans the murder. She makes the purchase of her very own semi-automatic handgun. She takes not only basic shooting lessons in the months before the murder, but specialized ones, dealing with very particular scenarios.
Rhonda had been rehearsing this homicide repeatedly at the local gunshot range. She even specifically asked, if I'm at the top of the stairs or if I'm upstairs and an intruder is coming up the stairs and I'm there, when can I shoot him?
Her shooting instructor testified that Rhonda was very proud of the fact that her targets were generally hit center mass. And that means that she was proficient at striking the target in an area that represented the heart, the lungs, the spine, the vena cava.
On July 21st, 2004, she rents a car, drives it to a shooting range in Oak Hill to practice, then drives to the house on Mission Oaks Boulevard. Prosecution alleges she lures him into the bedroom. She ambushes him and shoots Jimmy Jost in cold blood.
She drives with her son back to her friend's home, and by the friend's account, Rhonda was calm.
A friend testifies that just 2 months before the murder, Rhonda says she plans on seducing Jimmy, handcuffing him to the bed, mutilating him, and then setting the house on fire.
Defense counsel wants the friend to testify as to why Rhonda Glover wants to kill Jimmy Jost, to specifically discuss Rhonda's allegations about child pornography and the abuse of their child.
But the court doesn't allow any discussions of the sex abuse allegations. They believe it's prejudicial, but that doesn't stop Rhonda.
Rhonda Glover disregards this order and says, "I thought during this trial and testimony that I would be able to prove that Jimmy had in fact molested my son."
Despite what she's been ordered, she gets herself heard, but the jury's not buying it. They're not convinced.
The many graphic accounts of Rhonda's violence and acts of premeditation add up.
There's a history of delusional behavior, excessive drug and alcohol use, and violence, at least according to what's heard at the trial.
It's on record that not long before the murder, Child Protective Services needs to check on their child, and Rhonda tells the worker that their child is Jesus Christ.
Her claims of self-defense are really weak. In fact, it takes the jury only 2 hours of deliberations to find her guilty of murder. She's sentenced to 46 years in prison, and she's set to be released in 2050.
I wouldn't say it was an open and shut case, but the fact that she did not want to claim psychiatric reasons. She did not want to use an insanity defense. She was very sensitive about the fact that the people knowing she had mental problems. And so that never came up. Maybe she would have been sent to a mental hospital. No way of knowing.
His best friend remembers that he and Jimmy share a beer on July 20th, just before his murder.
Jimmy steers the conversation away from himself and Rhonda. Maybe he's taken all he can take from her and is finally ready to let her go. Maybe she senses it too and feels the need to kill him before he cuts off ties with her. We'll never know.
The Austin police revealed to his best friend that the last call Jimmy Jost makes on his cell phone is to him, but he misses it.
And his friend muses that Jimmy's only fault is loving women too much and being too generous. Something powerful draws this couple together and keeps them together for far too long.
Friends say the wrong woman gets a hold of Jimmy Jost.
It's a sad story of what seems to be mental illness, drugs, and a life of excess.
Glover petitions the Court of Appeals of Texas and asserts that the district court abuses its discretion by refusing to submit an instruction on the lesser included offense of criminally negligent homicide. On November 8, 2007, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals denies the appeal and upholds the judgment.
Rhonda Glover was both a lover and a killer. She was both the beauty and the beast. Jimmy Jost was the last to know this.
And the friends of Jimmy were especially heartbroken because he was such a nice guy, and despite Rhonda's problems, he felt safe with her, or felt he could be safe with her.
community on the rise, filled with people looking to make a great life for themselves.
He was nice to everyone. He was very generous to his family, beloved by all.
When Eric loses contact with everyone in his life, his friends and family are quick to grow concerned.
He had not spoken to family in 2 days.
That was just highly unusual.
But for him, it's already too late. Silver Spring, Maryland, is a community located just north of Washington, D.C.
It was really up and coming. A lot of clubs, a lot of bars, a lot of brand new high-rise houses and apartment buildings, condominiums. It's a much younger crowd, a much more urban crowd, lots of metro access, lots of jobs available, very close to D.C. So it's a very sought-after area.
It's a very diverse community. It's kind of an urban area, even though we are a suburban community. It is literally only maybe a block and a half outside of the District of Columbia. It was a very trendy area.
Eric Samoa was charismatic. That was the number one word that a lot of people use to describe Eric. He worked at a luxury dealership in Bethesda, and he was a smooth talker. He was funny. He was the person everybody wanted to be around. He was the number one salesman at their dealership. He was the first one in. He was always the last one to leave. Everybody loved him.
Eric Simone was 34 years old. He was beloved by friends and coworkers. Eric made somewhere between $10,000 and $20,000 a month. He was a ladies' man. He was nice to everyone. He was very generous to his family, beloved by all. He was the kind of guy that kept contact with just about everybody that was part of his life, family and friends. He was very attentive to his customers, which led to his success in business. And, he was a very popular guy.
Eric is living it up. He has great relationships, an incredible job, and lives in style.
Apartment complex was one with a brand new facility surrounded by $750,000 condominiums to $1 million condominiums. Lots of shopping and dining you could walk to in this particular area. The building itself was very fancy. It had an indoor pool and workout facilities.
In spring of 2012, everyone in Eric's life suddenly loses all contact with him.
So at that point, on June 6th of 2012, Eric had not shown up for work, and that was, of course, unusual for Eric. His manager was concerned. He had not spoken to family in 2 days. Eric was always very involved with his family. He talked with his sister, his friends a lot, and that was concerning to them that there was 2 days where basically he was unavailable.
And this is somebody who lived with his cell phone. It was absolutely essential to all of his personal relationships and the way he conducted his business. That's how he reached out to his customers. His phone went dead. That was just highly unusual. The work people were so concerned, they contacted his family and talked to his mom and his sister. And one of his sisters ultimately called Montgomery County Police and requested that the police do what we call a welfare check. Can you please go to the apartment, check to see if he's okay? They got together with the landlord who gave him the key.
Calling the police is usually thought of as something strictly for worst-case emergencies, but sometimes we're needed just to come into a situation and make sure everything's okay. A welfare check is something that can be critical when a person lives alone and suddenly loses contact.
When they went to the apartment, the first thing police noticed was a really awful smell. And Eric's apartment, though very luxurious in a high-rise, was small. So when they came in the front, you kind of immediately see this bedroom to the side. And that's where Eric's body was found, in bed, virtually looking undisturbed. All the lights off, the blinds shuttered. And Eric was actually hands tucked under his chin, his sheet tucked under between his hands, just as if he was peacefully sleeping. but obviously the police noticed that there was a bullet hole in his head.
Initially, police thought that it was a suicide.
While police are conducting their welfare check in Eric's apartment, his family is down in the lobby waiting on news. By the time they are told what is happening, the investigation is leaning toward the theory that Eric has committed suicide.
That was the initial information that was relayed to his family. They were absolutely horrified by the suggestion that that was what would happen. They said he would never do that.
The initial theory that Eric must have committed suicide doesn't last very long after the scene of the crime is more thoroughly investigated.
That was backtracked on very quickly because the officers obviously conspicuously saw that there was no gun.
This was not a suicide. It was a homicide.
There was one shell casing found on the bed. It was a spent shell casing from a .380. No gun was located.
The medical examiner conducts an autopsy to confirm cause of death and look for any other possible forensic evidence which could help steer the investigation.
The mechanism for death in this case was a gunshot wound. The gunshot wound was to the high part of the front of his head, the temple. It appeared to be an execution, essentially, to us and to the police. And there was also a bullet that was recovered at the time of the autopsy inside of Eric's body.
There is very limited evidence at the crime scene, leaving ballistic evidence as the only lead to follow.
There appears to have been nothing stolen, nothing ransacked, so it also appeared that whoever got into his apartment was someone that he let in there. They didn't break in, and they apparently didn't come to steal anything because they didn't take anything.
With no apparent sign of theft or disruption to the apartment, we're left to believe that whoever is responsible is likely someone Eric knows. Someone he's close enough with that they either have their own key or he's comfortable with them spending the night.
With little else to go on, the police are left with only a .380 bullet shell to bring Eric's killer to justice. But will it be enough? Silver Spring, Maryland, is an up-and-coming community just north of Washington, D.C. Great for young professionals to build their lives. Eric Samoa is a successful car salesman, known for keeping in touch with everyone close to him and never having his phone too far from reach.
When Eric hasn't been heard from for 2 days straight, his family calls the police to do a welfare check, leading to the discovery that he has been murdered.
Later on in the investigation, it was very quickly realized that Eric's phone was missing. That was the only thing that was missing from the apartment, and there were valuables all around, his wallet, a watch. The only thing missing was the phone.
Eric's missing phone is considered especially curious because he's known for keeping in touch with everyone close to him. His lack of communication is exactly what tipped off his family and led them to have the police check on him. Why wouldn't his phone be in his apartment? Has whoever killed him taken it?
So at that point, the police, I think their first line of attack was Eric's life through that cell phone. They didn't have the phone. They were able to very quickly get cell phone records. And they were able to see when Eric was texting messages, where the phone was. They were looking for the phone's location. The phone was ultimately never found. And throughout those records, they were able to identify the people that Eric was in contact with on the last days of his death. Most of them were friends and family. Most of them were people that had reached out to the police that were concerned about the investigation and asking questions. The police, though, did quickly realize that there was one number that kind of kept coming up over and over again. It was a Mississippi number. And his family didn't know that he knew anyone from Mississippi.
The police focus on trying to identify the owner of this Mississippi number from Eric's cell phone records.
The police didn't know who this person was, so one of the detectives in the case decided to really just canvass the garage of the apartment complex to see if they could find a car from Mississippi. A lot of young people live in the area. We're close to D.C. A lot of people who only are in the D.C. area for a short period of time do live in Silver Spring. So the police thought, hey, maybe there was somebody from out of state that was here, and they were able to locate that car.
Tracing the license plate number reveals the name Katrina Ben, a woman who has recently moved into the building. With this information, the police are able to track her down and bring her in for an interview to ask her about her relationship with Eric.
So Katrina Ben was from Silver Creek, Mississippi. She was a very young, very attractive, very smart nurse. By all accounts of people who knew her and previous employers, she was really good at what she did. Her patients really liked her. She ended up becoming a traveling nurse because she wanted to sort of see the country and see the world. And she was with a company that would staff her to 3-month sort of stints all around the country. So she moved very, very frequently, and she did get to do what she wanted. She got to see a lot of the country through her job.
She also was a very attractive young woman. Her families did have some concern, as you might imagine, a young, attractive young woman who sort of a nomadic, moving around every 3 months from place to place. They had some concerns about that, but she loved it, and that's what she did. And she was apparently beloved by the patients that she cared for and had lots of close friends.
So Katrina and Eric actually met at the Viridian apartment. There was a community lounge on the 15th floor that was available to residents for parties and community functions. And during that time of the year was the NBA playoffs. And the apartment was organizing sort of playoff watch parties for the residents to go. She was wearing scrubs. He recognized her as a nurse. Eric was very entrepreneurial. He was always looking to kind of set up new companies, start a side hustle. And one of the things he was looking to do was start up a nursing staffing company. And she was also interested in that as well. So when he saw that she was in the healthcare field, they exchanged information related to potentially establishing a business relationship, but they also became quick friends as they were in this social group that was watching the NBA tournament.
That began a friendship that very, very quickly escalated into a sexual relationship between the two of them. During the 3 or 4 weeks, there were extensive text messaging that went back and forth between Eric and Katrina. And that text messaging began 3 or 4 weeks before, pretty benignly. Nice to meet you. Hey, handsome, how you doing? How's your day going? Very benign things. It became very easy to see the rapid escalation in the nature of the relationship simply by reading the text messages. And it rapidly became sexual, and they openly talked about it in their exchanges on the text messages. And coming up to the night of the murder, if you read the text messages, you realized that she was supposed to come over to his apartment that night to watch, they were both mutual NBA fans. They were supposed to come over to watch a game in the apartment that evening.
I'm a basketball fan, and so is he. So that was our connection. The game was coming on that night, and he was like, we can watch it.
On Monday, June 4th of 2012, Eric Samoa and Katrina Ben made plans to watch an NBA playoff game. And Katrina was supposed to come to Eric's apartment to watch that game. Eric and her hung out that evening, but she herself would say that Eric just was not attentive to her. He was making phone calls, he was paying bills, he was online checking his email, and he even took her at some point to go to a drug dealer's to buy some marijuana.
Sometime in the second quarter, he said, I did something real stupid a couple of days ago. And I was like, what? He said, I smoked some weed. I was like, okay, whatever floats your boat. I know people that smoke weed. I've never had any in my life. Feel free to take a blood sample, hair sample, whatever you need to do. I've never had any. I don't like to be around it, And I kind of said something to that effect to him. I was kind of joking, but I was like, I work for the government. I ain't got time to be going down for no weed, He was like, girl, please, I know somebody in the building, you know, I kind of want some. A few minutes later, he called someone, and he asked them 2 or 3 times, where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at? And then he just hung up. I don't know if they hung up on him. I don't know.
As Katrina continues recounting the events of the night, this unknown person crops up again.
Beginning of the 3rd quarter, he, I know this sounds so stupid, but for real, I just relate stuff to
I'm a
what
basketball
quarter
fan
it was.
too, so
you know, I don't know what time it was.
That would have been probably, the games usually last about 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking probably a little after 10.
Yeah,
10 and
it was.
10:30 then.
Mm-hmm. So whoever this was, he was speaking code, but I'm not stupid.
Right.
I know what 420 is.
What was the...
You know, 420 is what I picked up on, but it was other I don't know what the hell he was saying. I'm not that cool. I don't know.
There absolutely was a contact between this marijuana dealer and Eric the night that he died. She went with him to the marijuana dealer's house, and they did buy drugs.
And she was able to give the police sort of very specific directions about the path they took to get to this drug dealer's house. Very detailed description of what he looks like, and she's able to describe the conversation between Eric and this drug dealer in great detail.
Eric and Katrina go back to his apartment after their drive. They watch the rest of the basketball game and eventually go to bed.
She is awoken in the night to hearing 2 men talking, and she recognizes that one of them is Eric, and she believes the other one of the men in the apartment is this drug dealer that she saw earlier. And she says she's sort of looking through a crack in the door, hearing this conversation.
When I woke up to him talking to somebody, and it was a guy, and he opened the bedroom door, he came in, and as he opened the door, I could see who I think is the guy from the apartment, like, walk by to go to the couch. So that's who he was talking to.
When Eric comes into the room to see Katrina, he has been smoking marijuana. She doesn't want to risk smelling like it herself and tells him she doesn't want to be near him.
And she kind of says she feels uncomfortable. She doesn't really know what's going on. She doesn't want to be there. So she decides to go through the closet exit for the bedroom out to the front door.
Can y'all just please tell me what happened?
Well, like I said, I think I told you that he was murdered. We still trying to put the timeline together, but obviously we thought you were one of the last people to have been with him. But now, you're telling us that when you left, this guy's with him.
Katrina's account of the night gives the police their first major suspect. But who is this supposed drug dealer? And can they find him before he kills again? Eric Samoa is found murdered in his own bed, shot in the head with a .380. Police are able to get his phone records, revealing that he's been in close contact with Katrina Ben on the night of his murder. Katrina is brought in for questioning and explains that she isn't the last one to see Eric alive. She tells them that when she leaves his apartment, a drug dealer is there.
There were text messages that led them to a phone number, which led them to a cell phone location and then an associated address. They ended up going to that associated address, and this drug dealer was arrested on unrelated drug charges.
We did a search warrant. The purported drug dealer owned a .380. Now, as you can imagine, based on the information coming from Katrina, that he was there when she left, knowing that he was shot with what appeared to be a .380, they thought, well, here it is. This is the murder weapon.
At this point, it looks like an open and shut case. The victim was killed by a .380. A witness places this man at the scene of the crime. This man even owns a .380.
He was interviewed. He absolutely adamantly denied being involved in the murder, and he flat out said, I've never been to his apartment, check my phone. And the police did. And never once could they put him through his phone at Eric's apartment.
The investigation into this man does not stop with phone records. The police continue to look into him, but as evidence continues to build, they are forced to concede that he could not have been involved.
And what we did, in fact, was through cell phone records, we found out where the drug dealer was at the time of the killing. We looked at the photo records and realized he never came into the building. We interviewed him and found out that, look, I don't even know where my customers live. I go to their houses. They come to me. Using the cartridge case, they were able to exclude the .380 as the gun that had fired the bullet that killed Eric. And so the .380, even though he owned a .380, it was not the murder weapon. It was excluded as the murder weapon.
While the police rule out their prime suspect, Eric's funeral is held, and Katrina says her final goodbye with the rest of Eric's friends and family.
Katrina Ben attended Eric Samoa's funeral, and she sat front and center, and she grieved, and she was dressed to the nines, and I remember it was a black dress and heels. She mingled with the family, and she sent her condolences. When the investigation ran cold, the police did ultimately sort of turn back to Katrina. There were a lot of seasoned detectives on this case, and there were just a lot of little things that didn't add up. Some of her reactions were strange. Some of her reactions were inconsistent.
She became the focus in the investigation, mainly because of the text messages. Showed their relationship and showed that there was some tension in the relationship about him not really giving her the kind of attention she wanted. And even on the night of the murder, attempting to break the date before they actually did come to be together, ostensibly to watch some portion of an NBA basketball game.
On June 29, 2012, Katrina is approached at her building by police wearing a hidden recording device.
So at some point, the detectives decided to wear a recorder to go to her apartment to execute a search warrant. Unbeknownst to Katrina, that entire encounter was recorded, and police officers were talking to her throughout that search.
I shouldn't have to deal with this. I'm tired of it. This is what happened. Two and a half months of my life, and this is what I have to deal with. You know, Eric was a cool person, great con for Eric,
but also understand, he's dead.
To me,
he's dead.
Worth all this. He was not.
Obviously, I don't think that you killed him. But the only way I could tell my boss to kind of like leave you the hell alone is to say, we checked the computer, we checked the phone. She doesn't have do you own a gun? Have you ever fired a gun?
No.
Do you have
Probably should have one.
Do you have a gun in your apartment? Anywhere here?
During that meeting, I think the officer's suspicions were heightened because at that point, she said, I wish this guy had killed me. And officers kind of were perplexed by that. And she said, it probably would be a lot more peaceful for me right now if he had just killed me instead of Eric. And the police were really baffled by that comment because it was just very cold, it was very calculating, and it was very different from the grieving kind of girlfriend that she wanted to portray at the beginning of the investigation.
Regardless of suspicions leaning toward Katrina, there is only evidence that she's with Eric that night and nothing to connect her to the actual murder. Because of this, the police instead put their focus on finding the murder weapon.
It might be a bit of a long shot, but at this point, the lead detective on the case begins looking at lost property which might have been turned in since the date of the murder, with the hope that maybe a gun had been turned in.
So what actually happened was, at that time in 2012, any lost property that was found by the police, it simply was categorized as like one code, missing property. Didn't matter if it was a gun, didn't matter if it was a cell phone, didn't matter if it was a bicycle. So all that missing property just went into one code. So what Detective Rubin did was he pulled every single piece of missing property in those days after Eric Samoa's murder, and there ended up being, I think, like 58 reports. And the second to last report was a discarded .380 Lorsen that was found on the side of 495, not terribly far from Eric's apartment.
When Eric Samoa is murdered in his own bed, the only evidence as to who could be responsible are the ballistics found at the scene, and the fact that his cell phone has gone missing. Cell phone records reveal that Katrina Ben is most likely the last person to see Eric alive. But there's nothing to connect her to the actual act. But the discovery of the .380 automatic Colt pistol could be a key to breaking the whole case.
The missing property report has an account of where and when the gun was found.
If anybody's ever been to Washington, D.C., you'll know that surrounding Washington is something we call the Beltway. It's an interstate highway. It's 4 to 8 lanes wide. In the early morning hours of June 5th, a paramedic who was driving to work on the Beltway, he was in almost dead stop traffic on the Beltway. He was in the far left lane. Paramedics looks out his window and he sees laying on the ground a handgun. He's dead stopped in the roadway. He thinks it's bizarre. But he gets out of his car, picks up the handgun, looks at it, and what he does, which is phenomenal, he immediately goes directly to the police station that's nearest to where he is. But also, this location is only a couple of minutes away from Eric's apartment and the apartment building where Katrina lives.
A gun of the right caliber, found so close to Eric's building the morning after he's killed, is too much of a coincidence to be ignored. But it's not enough. The investigators still need to find the gun's owner.
After the .380 was found on the side of the highway, the officers really did have their work cut out for them, because there is no national gun registration where you can simply take a firearm serial number and track every owner previously of that gun. The only ability for the detectives to do it is to do it by hand from owner to owner.
Turns out that gun was originally sold in a town in Mississippi. Katrina Ben is from Mississippi. It was initially sold in a gun shop only a few miles away from her house. An interesting coincidence.
Each physical location, they had to access the physical piece of paper related to the gun, and they had to keep doing those steps, which included Mississippi, West Virginia. They had to go to several different places.
The detective goes down to Mississippi itself, and he begins to trace from gun shop to pawn shop to pawn shop how that gun changed hands like 7 or 8 times. That gun was owned by various people.
I won't forget when Detective Rubin called me and he said, "We finally got that last trace back. It's Katrina Ben's gun." After the gun was traced to Katrina, the detectives immediately got the arrest warrant for her and went down to Silver Creek, Mississippi, and arrested her at her parents' home, and then interrogated her in Mississippi for the murder. And that, quite frankly, was one of the most bizarre interrogations that I have ever seen.
You still saying you didn't kill her? No. Okay. Do you own a firearm?
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of firearm do you own?
The .380.
Okay, why didn't you tell us that last time?
Because you never asked. I didn't kill anyone, so it's no need for me to say I have a gun. I mean, you never asked. You asked me, have you ever held a gun? Mm-hmm. Have you ever fired a gun?
And Detective Rubin said, "No, that's not true." And she said, "No, you asked me if I held a gun. And you asked me if I have ever fired a gun. And my answer to both of those were no. You never asked me if I owned a gun." And Detective Rubin's response was, I promise you we did.
Unfortunately for Katrina, the first time she is asked about owning a gun is recorded.
Do you own a gun? Have you ever fired a gun?
No.
Do you have
probably should have one.
What was so bizarre about that interrogation was, first of all, it was so long.
I mean,
she loves to talk about herself. And Katrina Ben will always think that she is the smartest person in the room. And she was going to admit to nothing. But she told her life story. The most interesting part of the story she told was why, when she finally admitted that she owned a gun. And it was because she had
11 stalkers throughout her life.
Think of me, I'm just a regular person listening. I'm not a detective. I'm listening to the
You
story.
told me I said I didn't remember buying it. I just told you I bought it 03, 04.
No, I said you remember buying it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm just a regular person listening to the story, right?
Right.
If I don't have an explanation right now, and it happened before on cases with me, I'll walk away thinking you're basically a cold-blooded killer. I've been in homicide 4.5 years. You're one of the best people I have to deal with, not just like smart-wise, but just, you're very polite. You tell a good story. I tell a good story.
Katrina refuses to admit to the crime at all. But by this point, there's enough evidence that a case is built around the perceived events of the night of the murder.
This was not a loving relationship. The investigation seems to reveal she did not know that. I think she felt her status was significantly more profound with him than it actually in fact was. And apparently there was at least one occasion where she saw him out with another woman. So this was beginning to build. And, if you read the text messages on the night that Eric died, you can see a lot of frustration because even on the night he died, he tried to break the date, but she wouldn't stand for him breaking the date.
What we were then later able to discover through the investigation was before Katrina came down to Eric's apartment. Through her key fob, her movement was recorded that night. She left her apartment, she went to her car, she came back into the apartment building and then down to Eric's apartment. And that's where we believe that she retrieved the gun. Katrina Benn, again, in her own statement, says that she then woke up at about 5 in the morning and she wanted to see what time it was. So she looked at his phone. The phone that was never recovered. And we believe at that point that she accessed the phone and was able to see that Eric was out with several different women, sometimes more than one woman on the same night of the week. And that was Katrina, with her earlier statement, nobody plays me that way.
I will tell you, the nature of the relationship she envisioned is not the nature of the relationship he envisioned. The reality is that Eric had a long-standing relationship with another woman who'd been dating for about a year. The next morning, she went to her car, not dressed for work, left her apartment, went someplace, came back a half hour later, walked back into her apartment, nothing in her hand. She later on claimed that she got gas, checked her credit, she bought gas by credit card. She didn't buy any gas. But if you drove from her apartment, drove down the block and got on the Beltway, because the entrance to the Beltway, where the gun is found, is down the end of her street, and then just sort of looped around and came back to the apartment, it would take you almost precisely and exactly 1/2 hour. She left her apartment with the handgun, went down the street, threw it out on the Beltway, came back to her apartment, armed with the information that she was no longer in possession of the murder weapon.
Katrina could tell you everything. She could tell you where she placed a wine glass. She could tell you the exact route they took to the drug dealer's house. But she couldn't remember when she last saw her gun, where she last had it, or where she put it. And for a woman who was so cunning about all these details and so exacting about all these details, it was very easy for the jury not to buy that part of her story.
Oh, you can think what you want to think, and you can stop talking to me right now.
It's not about that. It's about science and common sense.
Yeah, you can keep talking. Go ahead.
You want a lawyer? Is that what you're saying to us?
That's fine.
We'll walk away.
Yeah, bye.
We'll walk away.
Bye.
All right.
Thanks for the visit. Nice seeing you.
At this point, the evidence is sufficient that even without a confession, there's more than enough evidence to place Katrina Benn under arrest.
She was arrested on June the 21st, 2013, slightly a little bit more than a year after the killing.
Eric Samoa is found dead in his apartment on June 6, 2012, believed to be killed 2 days earlier. After a year-long investigation, with little more than ballistic forensics to lean on, Katrina Benn is arrested on June 21st, 2013.
Our case for Katrina Benn was a very circumstantial case, but we felt that it was a strong circumstantial case, which is why we were comfortable bringing the case. And in Maryland, the law makes no distinction about the weight that you can give to direct evidence versus circumstantial evidence. And the biggest piece of circumstantial evidence we had in our case was the gun. Once that gun was found, Katrina was charged. And then once she was charged, based on the legwork regarding that gun, we were comfortable prosecuting her.
Even without confirmation that Katrina's gun must have been used to kill Eric, the evidence that it could have been used is too much to ignore.
We did recover a bullet from Eric's body, as I mentioned earlier. The bullet became deformed upon entering his body. It was mangled. It was not suitable for comparison purposes uniquely to her handgun because of the deformities that were present in the bullet that was recovered.
There were a lot of coincidences that the jury was going to have to believe that that gun was not the murder weapon. Because Katrina Benn was the last person to see Eric Samoa alive. We could prove that. We could prove it was her gun. So you would have to believe that someone else used Katrina Benn's gun to kill someone she knew. And they did that within hours of her leaving Eric Samoa's apartment. And then they took her gun and threw it on the side of the highway sometime between the day Eric was killed and 2 days later when it was discovered. That area of the highway is only about a 20-minute drive from the apartment. And Katrina did what we call the trip to nowhere. She left her apartment. She left without her cell phone. She was gone for exactly 1/2 an hour. She returned to the apartment. She picked up her cell phone and then she went to work and she was able to make it to work on time. In Maryland, motive is not an element of the offense, but the jury can consider a motive or lack of motive as a reason to convict or acquit. And juries, they want motives, quite frankly. And that was a very hard part of the case for us. But when you looked at the text messages and you looked at the time frames and you looked at how that relationship between Eric and Katrina soured, the motive was sort of the oldest motivation in the book, right? Jealousy and a scorned lover. That is ultimately the motive that we put forth to the jury. In Maryland, it's always the defendant's right to speak last. She spoke at her case and she turned directly to Eric's family and spoke and denied it all and said she loved him. And that was like a spectacle. The family lost their minds. They ran out of the courtroom. We waited till she was done speaking and then Detective Rubin kind of ushered everybody back in. The final verdict in the case was that Katrina was guilty on all counts. The jury convicted her of first-degree premeditated murder, and they convicted her of use of a firearm during the commission of a felony or violent crime.
She got the most profound punishment you can get under the law in my state, life without possibility of parole.
What we said to the judge at sentencing, and I think what is still true today, is this was not a crime of necessity. This was a cold and calculated murder simply because of a slight that this woman felt. Eric didn't take her out. He didn't show her off. He didn't take her to nice dinners, and he didn't call her when she wanted to be called. And that is the sorriest reason ever to take someone's life. Katrina is not someone that can be rehabilitated because there was no necessity for her crime. She killed simply because she felt slighted. And in that case, there's no telling what she would kill over again.
Eric was a good guy. He was a fun guy. He was considerate. He was, by most people's standards, pretty wealthy guy. He was generous. I think he was generous to his friends. He was generous to his family. Obviously, this was catastrophic to them. Eric's family, this was an immigrant family. Eric's mom and dad immigrated to the United States. So this was an American success story. Eric was an immigrant family success story that any family could be proud of, and this family was enormously proud of Eric.
Eric's family was very appreciative for the work that the state's attorney's office and the police department put into solving Eric's case. It was not an easy road, and it was not a straight line, and the case was cold for a while, but the family was very satisfied, I do believe, with the verdict in the case. It is truly a case where everybody that was assigned to that case, I do believe, was in the exact right place at the exact right time to hold her accountable. It really was a team effort between the prosecution, between the police department, the forensics teams. She was so smart. She was so calculating. And there are just so many things that could have happened in a different way that would have left her out of the picture. If Detective Reuben had never thought to look for that Mississippi license plate, the very next day she would have moved to Baltimore and potentially no one would have found her. If Brad Shoemaker hadn't looked over on the side of the road and turned that gun in, it might have been destroyed forever. There were just so many little pieces on that case that had to come together to get justice for Eric.
I think the families of these people, look, if you have a dead son, brother, loved one, they're still dead. I think justice is served to the extent that the person who did this was a cold, calculating execution. I think it was a magnificent police investigation, and we had the benefit of a good Samaritan giving us that gun. So justice is served in the sense that the person who did this killing is in jail for killing him. Still doesn't take away the pain from the family.
Bye.